We have our priority. It's changed to and condition. And given further ever we've been. Yeah.
Clear.
See, I mean, I've been doing it. Yeah. It's really helpful.
Here, can the folks that are sitting back, you guys hear me okay? Excellent. I'm loud mouth anyway. I'm amazed. Chris Hunter, you don't shake your head so fervently. He's like, yes, you're. Got friends here. My name is Amanda Peace. I'm the Division Administrator for Policy Data and Analysis at the Oregon Department of Transportation. I have the pleasure of working with the chairs of the Area Commissions on Transportation and Modal Advisory Committees. So really happy to be here with you today. And actually, this is an opportunity that many years ago, we had pretty regular check-ins once a year with our ACT and Modal chairs when the commission would develop its work plans and work programs. And that's been a while since that work was underway. And instead we've had ACT and Modal chair meetings twice a year. So I recognize many of you around the table from those conversations. They've been great. Chair Brown and formerly Vice Chair Beyer helped to lead those groups now. Commissioner Baker and Chair Brown are leading those conversations. We'll still have another fall active modal chair meeting for the group to get together and talk about where we're at and prepare for the next legislative session and where the funding conversations are at, and then also check in on the capital investment plan process. So we'll have a lot to cover at that meeting. But today's conversation is really for you each as committee members to have face time with the Transportation Commission. You'll see the commission is 4 individuals right now. Normally it's a commission of 5, so they are down a commissioner right now, which means that coverage out to some of our area commissions, so some of our modal committees is a little bit spotty right now. You can imagine lots going on. So I think the opportunity to be in front of the commission, talk to them is absolutely key. And so I'm going to keep my remarks to a bare minimum here so that you have the time and opportunity to interface, have the commission hear from you on what some of your major issues are, understand a little bit more about some of your committees. And I actually think it'll be really informative as well to the 2027 transportation funding work as well. To hear from our regions on what are the issues that you're facing, to hear from our modal committees on what some of the challenges and opportunities are. That's going to be absolutely key as we figure out how we focus that and actually act as one voice together, because we're powerful together. And so how do we find those consistent kind of themes across? And I think we'll hear some pretty consistent themes from what I've seen from the slides. As we go through today, okay, so this is where I wear my prop because my staff put this together, and apparently it's me. Okay. And now some ground rules. We have a lot of folks around the table here. And because of that, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the slides that you provided. We're only going to go through the first one that you provided. It's just an overview of the committee. You'll have 3 minutes, and there'll actually be a timer to just go through that. The reason we have a slide is there's a leave behind that the commissioners have and can see, but it's a little bit of orientation. Like, what does your group do? What do they focus on? What are some key issues? Then it will be open-ended thereafter, where it's really answering the questions of what are your biggest needs, what do you see as the biggest opportunities, and what's something that you want the commission to know and to hear. When we go into that open part, you'll turn over your name tag, and then I'll try to keep track of who put theirs up and call on you around the table. Just be cognizant that there are other people that want to speak, so try to kind of keep remarks as concise as possible, but we do want to hear from each of you. This is really a listening session, more or less. Chair Brown, is there anything else you'd like to say to us out before we get started?
I just wanted to thank everyone for making the trip. I know that it's somewhat of a burden sometimes because you're coming from areas that are quite far away, but we really do appreciate the in-person participation. And I don't know if we have anybody online.
No, so all the chairs are here in person today. We are live streaming this so that folks can observe the conversation remotely.
And I just wanted to give a moment and let each of the commissioners actually introduce themselves to you. We do take this important. I told you this a long time ago. We really do care. And so I drug them all here and to show you how much we do care. But I think that as you get to know the rest of the commission, you'll see that it's not true. I didn't run the last commissioner off. I do keep a tight ship. Okay. There are a couple things just so to remind you, if you're taking too long, I'm going to give you this sign to move it along because we do want to hear from everybody. And it is true that I don't allow them to ask any questions. So.
Good afternoon. I'm Lee Byer. I'm the vice chair of the commission, and I'm the liaison to the Lane Act and the Cascades West.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Baker, Commissioner. I'm wrapping up my 3rd year on the commission. And I'm the interface with the Act, the Region 1 Act. And I need to get active at the Lord John Day. So hopefully you'll see me and I'll see you soon. Any chance to head to your part of the state is a treat for me to do. So I think Chair Brown has hammered into us that the truth is always local. We as commissioners need to be out and spending as much time as we can in all the communities, all the counties around the state. So it's one piece of this assignment I really enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Bill Chang. I am the newest of the Oregon Transportation Commissioners. I was appointed a little over a year and a half ago. And it came in at a very interesting time in terms of transportation funding for the state. But it has been my pleasure and honor to get to connect with the Central Oregon Act, the South Central Oregon Act, and the Southeast Oregon Act. And I draw a tremendous amount from the contacts I have. All politics is local, all transportation is local. And we, as the Oregon Transportation Commission, really are well served by understanding the local setting, the local priorities, the local challenges, as we try to steer the Oregon Department of Transportation, make recommendations to legislators and things like that. So thank you very much for the work that you do on your acts. That helps us do a better job.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Sumption, the interim director here at ODOT, and if Commissioner Chang thinks he came in at an interesting time. Say about that. Many of you I know from my former role as the state parks director, but it's good to see you all. And it's been very fun to learn more about the acts and better understand how we're prioritizing projects, because I've talked to many of you who are like, but mine's the most important. So it'd be really fun to find out this is really most important. Thank you for being here in person, because this is so much better for all of us to come together and arm wrestle over these things. So I just appreciate all of you making the drive. And I know some of you, it was a lot more than others. So thank you.
So in the vein of safety, I don't recommend arm wrestling, but maybe some words. We'll see how it goes. So what we'll do is we'll go through each of the presentations. If we did our organization right, it is in the order of slides as we go through. This offers the opportunity for each of you, please introduce yourself and then share a little bit about your committee for context or anything important that you want to share. Again, everything is on these slides. These slides are shared online, so you don't have to go verbatim through those, but just some highlights would be fantastic, and then we'll get into the open discussion.
Thank you. I guess I get to go first here. My name's Dave Thompson. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. My other co-chair, Alma Poole, couldn't make it here today, but he sends his regards. Our committee was actually formed by the Oregon legislature, and our members and our roles are defined in the statute. Members are appointed by the governor. We have 8 positions, of which all are currently filled. We advise ODOT and the OTC on regarding bicycle and pedestrian transportation, including facilities, rules and regulations, and anything else that has statewide impact. Meet several times a year. Our big work items right now, we're monitoring implementation of the recommendations that came out of the active transportation audit that was done in 2024. That audit basically said that the major obstacles to not accomplishing their goals for active transportation were the amount of space on a right of way on the roads and the amount of money. And I think we're all going to hear that a lot today, but it's certainly true in our space. So we're going to monitor that and continue to advise ODOT as things move along there. We're going to take a look at the Oregon Community Path Program. That's a program that in the past has funded bicycle and pedestrian off-street paths across Oregon. The money for that was diverted this time through the legislature, so we're going to take the time where we're not prioritizing projects for awards and instead look at how we prioritize things as a whole and potentially make recommendations on changes to that. And finally, the 55th anniversary of the Oregon Bike and Pedestrian Bill is coming up in June, and we're going to be in Salem celebrating with you guys on that and recognizing, how far we've come. We still have a long way to go.
And I know how much Chair Brown loves an electric bike, so
Yes.
she'll be going around. Yeah.
Yes, I'm gonna ride. How about you guys?
Guess you know.
You go now.
What day are we talking?
And I haven't seen any hand waving from Chair Brown yet, so real quickly, oops.
Sorry, I'm the mean one.
Okay, moving along.
Okay, Ross.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm Ross Lane. I'm Vice Chair of the Rail Advisory Committee. My day job is I handle state government affairs efforts for Genesee and Wyoming across our western properties, including Oregon. We operate 2 shoreline railroads in Oregon, Central Oregon Pacific, and the Portland and Western. Our biggest, well, we'll talk about challenges later. We have quite a few vacancies, as you can see on the slide there, not for lack of effort. It's been, I think, a struggle to find stakeholders who want to be committed to, meeting a handful of times a year, but kind of getting into the meat of our discussions as we look at the overall freight rail industry and, of course, the passenger rail nexus that operates primarily on right-of-way owned by the private rail companies. Some of the big work items, Connect Oregon, of course, is one of the major things that we discuss as a committee as we take a lot of the presentations for rail projects that come to our committee. Like the other committees, we were, it was unfortunate some of the cuts that were made to Connect Oregon, as that program is very important for some of the freight rail projects, especially from the shoreline perspective, where our resources are just vastly different than those of BNSF and Union Pacific. But we will remain steadfast in our mission to look at those projects, and hopefully we can see hopefully a larger share of our freight rail projects that are approved under Connect Oregon than has been true in the last handful of cycles. The Oregon State Rail Plan, as many of you know, the federal government requires that the state rail plan be updated every handful of years. Sometimes we stick to that deadline in states, sometimes we don't, but that'll be a major work product that we're working very closely with ODOT staff on, and making sure the freight rail industry is heard, as well as our friends and colleagues in Amtrak and other interests in the passenger rail community. This upcoming legislative session, as I'm sure many will be discussing today, extremely important as we look at some of the work products that will come out of that. Short-line railroads largely mirror the local economies in which they operate, which is kind of less so for the larger class ones. And we've seen our overall volume in carload numbers on short lines, I think from where you're sitting, do this in the last 10 years. I think that's troublesome for the state. And so we're, I think, looking to make an impact and discussing, again, the importance of Connect Oregon, but other ways that we can maximize federal discretionary grants that come to the state. And that's true, too, for passenger rail folks that operate, again, on Class 1 system. The governor's work groups, I also serve as president of the Oregon Rail Users League. We have volunteered our services to participate on some of the sub-working groups. We haven't quite got that call yet, but looking forward to that process and seeing where we can fit in. Other information, Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill is the large bill in Congress every 4 years that authorizes and appropriates money for highways and rail projects, et cetera. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act had a lot of funding that was available for federal discretionary grants. We've heard that number won't quite be so high, but we are advocating as an industry to make sure that we're getting those programs well funded. Again, there will be a markup on that bill next week, Chairman Graves in DC. So we'll be looking to that to see what kind of impacts that will have, but I will pass the mic.
So Amanda, if the commissioners have questions, when do you want us to ask them? I know they're asking.
Because that's a statement, if you just say that no. If you have brief questions, let's ask them now. Otherwise, I think getting through the introductions quickly and then during the discussion piece, if that's okay.
So hold your questions right.
And I think I actually, during the discussion, if there's ways you want to frame up some questions, I'll turn to you commissioners first, and then we'll do the kind of open.
And then the other thing is there any way we can make the clock bigger? Because I can't give them the way it
Can't read it.
I can't see it. So is that possible?
We'll just start.
Oh, start time. Okay, we are now timing.
Yeah.
If I was over, I apologize. If I was under, I yield my time.
Very good.
All right, Mr. Anderson.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. David Anzer. I apologize for being late here. I was on conference calls all morning long. So I'm actually David Anzer. Mark Gibson is our chair for the Oregon Freight Advisory Committee. And he was not feeling well today, so he couldn't make it up. So he asked me to step in. And so here I am. Oregon Freight Advisory Committee, just as a side note, I looked up, I've been part of OFAC since 2009. I had no idea that I've been a part of this for that long. And the reason why I brought that up was the FHWA recommended that states have freight advisory committees. And they recommended that in 2015. We have been, I don't know how, Mike, you've been involved. Mike Montero has also been involved with our freight advisory committee for many years. And I have no idea how long it goes back, but it's been a really good organization and we focus on freight projects through the state. Our charge here is to advise the director and the OTC on regarding issues and policies around multimodal freight mobility. One of our big challenges is building and understanding how freight moves throughout the state. I feel like there's a lot of people that have a disconnect on how things move around our economy. And sorry, am I not going through the microphone here? Anyway, I just wanted to present, where are we on our slides here? Yeah, so if we want to move to the.
So it's only the first one right now.
Oh, the first one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you good?
Yeah,
Okay.
All right,
Awesome.
well, I guess I'll yield my time.
Yeah. We'll have data-driven staff sitting in for the Public Transit Advisory Committee to just kind of share their initial side. The other thing I say just to folks around the table here as you're waiting for your turn, I think hearing particularly from some of our modal committees, as you think and deliberate in your area commissions on transportation is really helpful to see what some of their key issues are. And I would say across modal committees too, one of the things I have interest in is getting a couple different modal committees to meet together. And really have some crosswork and areas that you prioritize and work collaboratively on. So just think about that as we go around. So Andrea?
Good afternoon. I'm standing in for our co-chair, Kate Wilson, who's from the Lane Council of Governments, who can be here this afternoon. We are essentially fully staffed the Public Transportation Advisory Committee. We have one opening right now, small urban provider. This was a committee that was formed by the OTC in 2000. They have played a key role, particularly overseeing our transit grant programs. The Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, in particular, when we have state plan amendments, they are the committee that does the review and recommendation to the OTC for final adoption and approval. They are also the committee that reviews the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund discretionary intercommunity grants. And also rule changes that PTAC just did had a considerable amount of work last year going through some rule changes for this state program. And they also provide input to our work to support transit providers, particularly technical assistance.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Richard Hoffer, I'm the chair of the Oregon Transportation Safety Committee. It's a statutory committee under ORS 802.300. We have lots of things that we do at our area. We oversee the Transportation Safety Action Plan, the Highway Safety Plan, and we review NHTSA agreements to get federal money for programs. This is very important to me because I am a paramedic and firefighter for 45 years, and I'm there for the aftermath when engineering, education, and enforcement doesn't work. I have, in fact, announced many people dead at motor vehicle crashes. I responded and found my father dead at a crash and pronounced him too. So this is very important to me that we help people understand that we drive safe. That's less than 3 minutes.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Patty Darrow, Shinsa County. I want to acknowledge that Seth Taylor is the vice chair from Jefferson County, and Susan Henry, Cook County Commissioner, is part of our group. It's really important. We have 3 items that we're bringing up today. The first one is the USA Highway 97. US Highway 97. It happens to be that there were 97 deaths in the past 5 years on Highway 97. I had to reconfirm that number because what a tragic coincidence. We actually had 25 deaths, fatalities in the year 2020. It's a nightmare. And we're actually here today to bring up the fact that between Madras and Terrebonne
in predominantly Jefferson County, we need to do something. People drive crazy fast. There's no medians. We need safety passing lanes. We need turns. It's a project that is just waiting for you all to endorse. It's been out of out of touch with what really needs to happen because of all the freight trucks that come on it too. We, for our region, have a lot of transportation that, wants to bypass Seattle and Portland. And where do they come? They come down Central Oregon on Highway 97. We love having them, we like helping them, but we really need that highway to be fixed. And it hasn't happened. So please include that in your thoughts today and every day. We've got to get 97 up to date. And then our second project we're really concerned with is Cal Butte and Oregon Highway 126. That is an incredibly busy intersection coming up the hill from Prineville on the way to Redmond. And oh my gosh, if you're coming from Rosada and you're pulling a horse trailer and you need to go west, you have to say several Hail Marys and, hope that you don't get hit with your horse trailer on. It's a simple fix, get a roundabout there. So I thought that was really amazing. And then the third item that we would love to correct, ODOT has a lot of money already in Highway 97, the North Bend corridor, but Empire itself desperately needs some helping hands. It's incredibly congested. There's a little bit of a signage issue there, and I think it's a fix that could happen. But honestly, if you heard anything I said today, Highway 97 had 97 deaths on it, and we are really in need of making that highway safer. It is the second busiest highway in the state for studying Deschutes County Road Director. So thank you. I think I need 9 seconds to go.
You're good.
Thank you. I'm Ron, Lincoln County Commissioner and Chair of the Cascade West Act. Welcome to our area. And if you saw one of our big projects, Van Buren Bridge, I think that's a good thing to highlight. In fact, it's a great accomplishment, and these projects don't get done overnight. They need advocacy, collaboration, compromise, partnerships, and flexibility, especially these days of limited funding. Transportation infrastructure needs to benefit the most amount of people. We see up there, Roger Nyquist is my co-chair, and then we did in our act was put a good slate of projects. We were doing this very inclusive process. We made sure that we looked at different funding sources for other projects before we put them on our priority list. They're not in order, so if you can get one done sooner rather than later, that would be great. And then we also know that this is the first step. We made sure that our act knew that this was just getting on this list was just the first step. It's going to take advocacy on our part, working with other acts, working with our legislators to make sure that we get support and that they also support us getting these projects through. Highway 34, it's a vital link, and also I-5 going north and south there in Corvallis. It's not only just a link, but it's also a vital corridor that many people in the state, many people of the country come and visit the Oregon coast. It's a very busy stretch of highway. So we want to make that as beneficial and efficient transportation for people to get there and also safety. We want to make sure that the people coming to the coast are safe, leaving the coast are safe, coming to OSU for a game, going back to their place for a game. The best thing I can say about our act is that when we did our process, we made sure that everybody was heard. We made a collaborative effort and try to do what's best and also look for other ways we can improve transportation and not just through the act. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Modal Francis. I am the area manager for Area 5, representing the Lane Act. Obviously, my chair today has not been able to come simply because of some other conflicts that she had, and which is Jennifer Gay. And my vice chair is Commissioner Seneca. He had a bunch of board meetings today that just couldn't come. So I'm here representing my group. So with that, I would like to share one interesting fact about the Lane Act. We are the only act that only covers one county, which is Lane County. That's why we're called the Lane Act. As far as our vacancies are concerned, we're at 28 group. We've got 5 member jurisdictions that are principally, I want to say inactive, but not really. That's mainly because they don't have a state highway that actually runs through their jurisdiction, like Westford, Dune City, and so forth. So they've been kind of in and out, if you will, with our active, but they still stay in touch with us. We have 3 vacancies, trucking, rail, and a disability community member to join our act. Some of the bigger items we've been worked on, we're working on in the coming year is updating our work plan. We've also are working on trying to adopt or update our bylaws. We actually have a sub-team or subcommittee put together to kind of work on all those items. And then later on through the year, we're hoping to have an update for everything, which will include all the new stuff that came out for the various acts. Some of the things we do is provide input to the various plans that ODOT puts out. Things like the highway plan, the traffic safety action plan, the freight plan. We also put input on some of the grants that come out. If you're familiar with the core grants, we actually send a member out to those grants to participate and provide information or input from our act. Some of the accomplishments we've had over the previous year, one of the bigger accomplishments that we really got engaged in was providing input on the CIP, the goals that this commission had actually put forth. That was a very active meeting talking about those goals, what's important to us. And then also, secondly, recommending projects for the CIP. Again, that has been a very lively discussion with the act, but we went through it, and it was I think every member was somewhat happy. And then the last thing, throughout the year, we have various groups that come and talk to us, and some of those groups, I'm just going to highlight those in case some of the other acts here want to have those particular bodies come to them. Vulnerable Users Crash Response Program, because we had one of those projects in our area that went fairly well. The other thing that we had, Lane County Health Department actually had someone come speak to us to talk about transportation issues as far as how those folks who have health problems or sicknesses and don't have a ride, how are they able to access transportation? And so
You're sucking up all the air.
And then the last item is we had LTD come and talk to us about the rural shuttle service that they will be coming out with. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Fidel. I think too, in addition to hearing what the different groups are working on, looking at the vacancies is helpful. So, we have rail folks here, we have freight folks here, we see vacancies in some of those categories. So you can do some fabulous matchmaking too. That's great.
And Amanda was giving me and told me to do this, so sorry.
Oh, see the leadership there?
Pass it on.
I am
It's all right.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Emerald Shirley. I'm the interim area manager for the Lower John Day area, and I will be sitting in for our chair, Commissioner Morley, who was not able to make it today. Our vice chair is Commissioner Justin Miller. We do have a few vacancies in our act, although I think that we will be filling our tribal member very soon. And then we have some leads on rail and marine, so we're hoping to fill those as well. A few of the big work items for Lower John Day Act this year, the number one is actually the third bullet, and it's very similar to what Commissioner Adair was sharing with COACT. The act is very focused on figuring out a way that we can lower speeds, especially along US 97, but throughout the entire act area. We had an update on the TSAP come to the act recently, and it confirmed that speed continues to be a major issue and leading to serious injury and fatal crashes. And so the act is looking to leverage our county partners, ODOT, educational outreach, our law enforcement partners, any way we can to attack this problem, because it really needs to be attacked from all angles to lower speeds on US 97. Our other big work items, maintaining rural pavement preservation. The act really feels like there needs to be a focus on making sure that we maintain our rural roads. And then also US 197 and 5 Mile is an intersection that continues to be a focus for the act. And partners are working together to figure out a way to increase the safety at that intersection. Commissioner Morley, Chair Morley did want to make sure that I say that he does appreciate that the commission does a lot of good work and that you all discuss a range of different issues and fund what you can. And again, would like to see a focus on the safety improvements along US 97. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lyle Morris, Cole County Commissioner and Chair of the Mid-Atlantic Light Act. My Vice Chair, Chris Chenoweth, couldn't make it today. Some big work items we're working on is just to maintain and update our priority projects list. And through summer discussion, we were discussing about our safety and how ODOT represents safety on our highways. And you've got a 4-year window of data, 2 years removed. We'd like to see that move to maybe a 10-year window to be much more consistent. So if you don't have an aberration of 1 year of no deaths, but the next one 6, it doesn't fluctuate so much. It gives much more consistent information. And it's just, we're also coordinating the safety quarter priorities throughout our region. We're going to be updating our work plan, charter, and operating agreement. But I'd just kind of like to highlight the 3 priority projects we have, and we allow every county to pick one. First one listed is Dundee Bypass. It started early 90s. We all know the Dundee Bypass. It's a major process. Relieving congestion, getting the cars to the streets, makes safety improvement in our communities and environmental impact without cars idling on our streets. Next up is Marion County is the Brooks I-5 interchange. It is the next Aurora Donald. The off ramps are not long enough, cars are backing up into traffic. But there's some interim opportunities that we could do at this intersection rather than do complete rebuilds this time. Just redo the off ramps, make them 2 lanes, add lights at both ends of the overpass, just allow traffic to flow. Trying to turn left when you come off the freeway to get across to the truck stop, or going the other way to go over to Brooks. You'll sit there for 20 minutes and cars just continue to back up. So that's coming, but there's our avenues rather than another $55 million project down the road. The next step is our top priority in our region. That's Highway 22 and 51. That is just east of or just west of Salem. And this started also in the mid-90s. And this is just safety. There are 7,000 cars a day come off Highway 51 merging onto 22. So 800 cars during rapid or peak hours making a left turn going off of 22 onto 51. Just 2 months ago, we had a school bus head on with another car that the driver of the car passed. But we literally missed. It hit the right front corner of that bus right at the door. Just a few feet farther, and it would have been a completely different story. It was full of kids. So this is a big, huge project. ODOT, we reviewed it 3 times. We brought it back off the shelf in 2019. They condensed from Doaksbury Road all the way out to Brick Railroad. We came with a $200 million project. We all know that's not feasible. We broke it down to 8 phases. And the first phase, the same thing that we suggested back in 2000, 2006. And that's to build the interchange at 22 and 51 and eliminate those left turn lanes. So that's our top priority for the group. And the nice thing is we're all in agreement on that. So, and for that, I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am neither Dan Doran nor Paul Andrus. Glad to be here. I'm the 3rd string quarterback. My name is Lisa Collier, and I'm like the vice. I don't know. Commissioner out of Loudoun County. Our big items are the CIP project priorities. We have a really great list of all surrounding maintenance and safety of our people. And then we're looking to permanent funding opportunities for maintenance projects and day-to-day operations. We do have some vacancies within our counties, but what I will say about the NEACT is that we have really great participation. We have about an average of 50 people every meeting. Really great input, passion, and just robust conversations that really just want to collaborate and get stuff done. So I think we have a super productive group, but we do have some vacancies, so we'll work on those. Other information and hot topics, I guess I would say we are looking forward to and going to push our way to the table as far as the 2027 legislative session transportation package.
We really are interested in participating with that.
Good afternoon, Casey Garrett, Columbia County Commissioner, Chair of the Northwest Act, and looks like Marshall Kirk wanted to be here today, but I will do my best to represent Columbia County, Washington, Western Washington County, Tillamook County, Clatsop County is our region. Our big work items are primarily focused around Highway 6. That is 3 out of the 5 identified projects on our CIP list. Highway 6, Highway 6, Highway 6. It's a lifeline to the Oregon coast, maritime industry, Tillamook cheese products if you like them, and tourism. The highway is over a 3 or so mile stretch is being consumed by the coastal range in that area. There's a map up there that you can barely see, but all those green dots are identified areas where sawdust chip that was put in 25 years ago to hold up the highway is rotting away, go figure. So that's our big priority. If that lifeline goes away, will cause big problems, not only for our region, but the rest of the state. Connect Oregon, those funds, we have, I believe it's 5 ports in our region. Major economic development opportunities, infrastructure needs, and multimodal connections there with rail, the river, and the highways. And transit continues to be a funding issue for our region. In the counties other than Columbia County, I think there's a higher need. In Columbia County, we continue to get stiffed on the STIF program, and most of our money goes to Multnomah County and Washington County because that's where our workforce goes. So if Columbia County is ever to have a legitimate transit program, changes need to happen there. That's about it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Paul Savas. I'm a Clackamas County Commissioner. I guess we have the most populous act in the region is 4 counties: Clackamas, Hood River, all of Multnomah, and a good portion of Washington County. About 1.5 million, 2 million people roughly, and a lot of people working, coming in from the area, both south, north, east, west, into the area to work every day. We are, again, the newest act in the sense that we've been only formed about 10, 11 years or so, maybe 12. I was there from the beginning. We have 31 members, no vacancies currently. And the first several years prior to COVID, there was a clamoring for a lot more engagement into discussion and decision making and so forth, and helping advise better. Always challenged by people driving in for the distances because it's quite a ways for people to drive in, especially during rush hour when the meetings are held. So as I've been vice chair for most of those years, and I've been listening to our members. So there's some organizational opportunities, I think, following COVID, this virtual versus a combination of virtual and in-person versus in-person. I'll tell you, it's a bit of handicap for us because our group is so large and we are very, very diverse. Our geography is diverse, our needs are diverse, the opinions are diverse. It's challenging. So I'm currently the chair. I've served as vice chair again for the whole period of time. And I think because of the size, and we also have a lot of turnover. We are fully, remember, we don't have any vacancies, but we have a lot of turnover, more so from one county than another. And so it takes a lot of time to get people up to speed. So it seems like every meeting, if it's 1 step forward, it's 2 steps back. So I have heard, and I'm sensitive to the operational challenges of ODOT and the funding, but I think our staff could use some more support, and our local jurisdictions are willing to provide that support. We have a lot of project needs. I don't even have any of them listed because there are so many, and the funding, the costs for those are so huge. But we have spent most of the last 3 or 4 meetings on the capital plan. We are very appreciative for the opportunity to be involved. We are also very appreciative of the OTC having a stronger engagement with the acts, and I completely endorse that. And I'm going to be an advocate to help you all. But we could use a little bit more help, and I can go into detail in another time on how we do that. But we're challenged again because of that diverse opportunity. I think we need to orient people, but the in-person versus the virtual, we're not making those connections. We're not getting people up to speed. And I'm glad there's not a virtual option to come here, but in a way, I know it's a public responsibility, because I am a county commissioner. I know we have to provide a virtual opportunity. But our in-person meetings that have a virtual opportunity are sparsely attended, and I think Commissioner Baker can attest to that. So I'm hoping we get more in-person meetings, but it is having an impact because, again, the diversity of our region.
My name is Mike Montero. I'm the chair of RBAC, and we're at the other end of the spectrum. As Paul, we're the oldest. So RBAC was formed with the Salem Act more years ago than I need to think about, probably 28 to 30 years ago. So our vice chair is Justin Gerlitz. We have 3 vacancies and we're working on that. Our big work items are update our charter and our work plan. One thing that I can tell you is what you're going to hear, it's already been mentioned, funding's an issue. And we're in full support of the CIP program that ODOT is using, because from a process perspective, I was eavesdropping over one of the comments about we want to have a process that identifies the priority projects rather than just to have some, and I say this with all due respect, some legislators say, well, here's the one I need to bring home for us. So we've done that. That's not been an easy process. We are concerned about the fact that with it being a new process, we're going to need ODOT support to help our local applicants. And so I hope that there's enough resources on the part of ODOT staff. So our biggest challenges, one of them is deferred maintenance and the unintended financial consequences that we don't maintain the infrastructure we've got. So we're thinking about what happens if we have a bridge that's low posted. We think about maybe losing a culvert on a state highway. Those are concerns to us, and we're concerned that there may not be funding to address those if that happens. So lack of funding, no contingency funding, move traffic safely, maintain the infrastructure. How do we respond to the housing demand? That's a big one. The governor has given direction and a target for 30,000 houses a year. Well, how do you do that if you can't meet the transportation planning rule on a state highway and you can't meet it when there is no funding? And so we're not saying that as a complaint, but simply calling it out as an issue has to be dealt with, because when you constrain the supply of available housing, Oregon is the poster child along with every other state on the West Coast. There are consequences when that happens. So that's something that the OTC is going to have to deal with in our legislature as well. Biggest opportunity without stable funding, joint ventures. And I'm proud to say our RV Act has been very effective in that. So for those of you who were around 15 years ago, the Brook Review project on Highway 62 was a collaboration with the private sector, county, state, and the MPO. Our region also was the only recipient of funding out of the Congressional Build Grant. So that made the first leg of our alternative to Interstate 5 in the case of the Cascadia subduction. So that's a big down payment on that diverse facility that could help freight move up and down the coast if we lose the viaduct. So our compliments to the OTC to continue to work with the area commissions. The reason they were set up was that they recognized at the time that there's a disability, if you would, or a defect in just sitting down with certain political figures and saying, this is what we need in our region. Now, the area commissions really a highly organized, collaborative arrangement that we can vet what our projects really, or our project needs really are, so that we can accurately advise the OTC. So we appreciate the opportunity and the OTC's leadership.
Good afternoon, Barry Schulmerger, Lake County Commissioner. Vice Chair is vacant. It's been vacant for a while now. You know, the South Central Act is probably the second least populated area, but we feel it's vitally important, and we feel that if we could make the investment, it will improve safety and it will help with economic development. And my points are these: big work items, US 97. I think it's been possibly been mentioned.
Where's the?
Yeah. So ours is on the south end though, at Klamath County, and my family, we had a friend pass away here not very long ago, and we had a funeral about 3 weeks ago. Her nephew came down from Portland. did the service on Saturday, drove back on Sunday, made it just north of Chiloquin and had to head on. So this happens a lot. And we got to listen to the Chiloquin emergency rescue folks. And there's not very many of them because they don't want to be part of that group. Because every time they get called, it is not a good thing to go to because they're constantly out there on 97 having to scoop somebody up. And the second part of it is, especially in the wintertime, nobody's slowing down. So they're worried about getting hit themselves. So it has made an impact on me listening to their presentation because they constantly need help because it's not easy to be a responder in that area. So we're pushing for extra lanes on 97 and to get some separation there between north and southbound traffic. Second thing, we have the southern travel route here in Oregon, and it's OR 140. But it has issues because it has a length restriction. Just east of Lakeview, you cannot legally travel a truck over 48 feet because you will not make the curves going around some of the sharper curves. I had just talked to yesterday a retired Lakeview ODOT manager who reminded me that his employees at the time, or anytime, have had multiple close calls just driving their snowplow trucks with semis who have decided to take the chance and go from Winnemucca to Medford. Or they're traveling 140 east to west and they can't make the back end of the trailer stay in the lane. And there's been lots of close calls. And then unfortunately, people with smaller vehicles sometimes get crunched by those back ribs. And so we would like to see that get straightened out. We feel like it would relieve truck traffic on 97 and it would improve economic development in Southern Oregon. We also have lots of just maintenance needs. A lot of people in Lakeview don't travel to Chiloquin to go up 97 to go to Eugene because of the safety issue. So they'll go up 31. Well, 31, you can bounce yourself to death at different places. And 31, it goes to Paisley, to Silver Lake, to Lapine, and then you drive back down 97 to Crescent to get over to 58. So those are just some of the issues. We have a lot of good places, but we feel that it would improve our safety and would help economic. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mike McLaughlin, retired mayor of Vail, Oregon. I'm subbing in for Judge Joyce. He had a death in the family. So our area, Southeast Area Commission on Transportation, covers Malheur, Grant, and Harney County. And I really appreciate Commissioner Baker and Chang. They regularly sit in on our meetings, so we really appreciate that. It's a great deal to have you guys there. I told my guys I'd give a shout out. We need some projects in Eastern Oregon, and I also wanted to remind the Connect Oregon guys. We have a short line in Vail, Oregon, so that's one of the short lines that we have here in Oregon. We did an advisory kind of poll to try to come up with what we thought as a group was most important, and of course we need to maintain and preserve what we have. We've got a lot of road miles in Malheur, Harney, and Grant County, so we really need to maintain what we already have. And that kept coming to the top. Road maintenance and maintaining what we have. That all of the advisory committees kept coming to the top there. We need to have some type of funding package, and also safety issues kept coming to the top of our priority list. So, and there are a lot of safety issues. I hear lots of stories. Highway 20 between Bend, Burns, and Ontario is getting a lot like what we were talking about today. I wanted to shift really quick and tell you guys about a couple of things that were working very well, which is so for cities less than 5,000, which I used to represent with the League of Oregon Cities. So we have the small city allotments, and that really makes a huge difference in what we can do in small cities. We don't get them all the time or every year we have to apply for them, but they are really the backbones of what we can do in small cities. And then, of course, Connect Oregon, that's a big deal for our small airports, and all the airports have used the Connect Oregon grants. Vail had done some paving. Ontario is the regional airport that's really coming along, and we've done a lot of work out there. That's basically all I have for you. So I just wanted to say, keep up the good work. There are things that are going well, but we need some type of funding package, and we'd love to have a project in Eastern Oregon.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Messenger. I serve as the chair of the Southwest Area Commission. My day job is city manager for City of Roseburg, so I do apologize. I'm going to have to leave early if you hear me head out. Our vice chair, Brent Boyard, is in the front row there. And we represent Coos Curry and Douglas counties. And we think we're pretty unique because while Coos Curry and Douglas get grouped together for everything the state does, we are very diverse communities. So Roseburg, we're inland. We have ports, we have rail. Freight is very important to our economy. We have 3 different Native American tribes that are represented in our area and on our commission. And so we're doing pretty good on vacancies. We've got 3 out of 23 primary positions open right now. We have an applicant for one of those that we will vote on, I think, on Friday. So we're doing pretty good on that. Our big work items, if we brought you our project list, it would be long, just like everybody else's. But really it's how do we as rural areas really have our voice and be able to understand and identify ways to get consideration and inclusion in the CIP process, and advocating for sustainable funding. So lots of decisions that the legislature's made in the past have impacted funding on local communities. And so we have the ratio we have now. It's imperative that we keep it because HB 2017, almost 10 years ago, changed how local communities can pass a gas tax, right? They used to have the ability to do that without a vote. That bill made it that you have to have a vote. And so for a community like mine, population of 23,000 taxpayers are supporting a daytime population driving on our roads of between 50 and 60,000 because we're the opposite of a bedroom community. And so we need every cent we can get. And for our entire act, we think maintenance is safety. Like we all have miles and miles of rural roads, and the number 1 fatal and injury A is roadway departure. And so when maintenance is cut, if you're driving down a highway and you're dodging potholes, that's a safety issue. If maintenance is cut and you're not doing the edge line striping, that's a safety issue. And it's a safety issue that leads to fatalities. And so we don't necessarily have the same issues that you might see on 97. But we do have safety issues that develop as lack of maintenance. So it's really important to our areas and a lot of the areas that I think are represented here today that we remember that ODOT's core mission was to get Oregon out of the mud. And we don't want to be back in the mud. And so if you only have limited funds, let's really talk about that core mission. The other thing we have ports, we have airport. Oh, I covered that, sorry. So as we work together, we have really strong representation from the bicycle and pedestrian community, and we understand each other's needs. And I think that as we put our CIP together, we had lots of extra meetings to make that happen. But we support each other as we move those projects forward. We have areas that get completely disconnected from the rest of the state if you have a landslide. The detour is somewhere around 4 or 5 hours if that section of Highway 101 goes away, which it does every few years. And so we know you're weighing a lot of different priorities, but we're going to advocate again for sustainable funding for the roads that you have as we move forward.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for going around. I appreciate the efficiency of the conversation. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do kind of a 2-minute summary of some themes that I heard in the conversation. We'll take a 10-minute break because I want to leave the majority of the time for the conversational piece. When we come back from break, I'll turn it to the commissioners for any specific questions they have, and then we'll do the kind of open-ended, what are the biggest challenges, opportunities, things you want the commission to know. And I think really hoping that the conversation feeds off nothing. So great overview, everybody. So a couple big themes I heard through the conversation. One, first and foremost, which I think is our top priority in anything transportation, is getting people and goods to places safely. Safety came up time and time again in each of your conversations. I think is absolutely critical. You know, whether that's a particular corridor, we have some corridor US 90, shall we use 97 a bunch of times that are key for travel across the state, whether that's for freight and economic development. It has lots of safety issues. So there's some key things that we need to address across the system. I think we all spoke to or know about limited transportation funding. And that means that we're making less bad decisions. There's no good decision that we're making when we don't have enough money to maintain, to operate, to have a safe transportation system. And so in those times, especially when we have a budget crunch, the ability to prioritize projects, the time that each of you spent in doing that process is so valuable and so helpful to our Transportation Commission. I'll go back to what Mike Montero said is the true value of our area commissions, of our modal advisory committees, is you are groups that are either focusing on a topic or your groups that are focusing on a particular area and deliberating within that. And so advising the commission, because the commission is going to get hundreds and hundreds of comments that are conflicting and different. The more that we can coalesce as a state on what are some of those core foundational things we need to focus on, the better we are for the limited dollars we have and for arguing for additional transportation funding. And then I heard a lot really around the power of collaboration. I think within your individual groups that you have, and I think opportunities for collaboration across things. So lots of opportunity, I think, to speak as one voice and to really support the transportation system. I'm going to stop talking because this gives me a perfect time to say, be back at 2:45, 10-minute break, and then we'll make this conversation then. Thank you, everybody. It varies like. I was told that this person refuses to give a demonstration, fired, of how to hold the mic so that everybody can hear you. So apparently like a pop star, that's how you're supposed to hold it. So when it comes to you, if you can be a pop star, and say your question or comments into the mic, that would be great. So in this portion of the conversation, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with some questions that the commissioners banked over the last, round of introductions. And then we have some general questions that are being asked. That are just pretty standard after break. What are your biggest challenges? What's your biggest opportunity? What is your greatest need for the commission to know about? So I would say on the needs side too, I heard some of you talk about this earlier. We have pointed out project manager, assistant vice manager for the 2027 transportation funding visioning group. Here, listening to the conversation and taking all this information back to some of those work groups. So this is an opportunity to kind of share both for the commission and for future funding conversations. So with that, Chair Brown, I'll turn it to you to go through any commission comments and Commissioner Chang.
I'm gonna let him speak.
So the chair is gonna let people speak. She's very kind, benevolent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Chang.
Thank you, Chair Brown, for letting us speak.
You're
I guess where each of the commissioners is gonna have a chance to say a few things and I get to kick off. I just want to express appreciation again for the acts and our modal chairs for helping us understand at a more granular level on the ground what is happening, what the needs are. And I wanted to also just re-emphasize to people that those who expressed concerns about funding or needs for funding, unfortunately, we're not the ones to solve that for you. The Oregon Transportation Commission does what the legislature has directed us to do with the resources that they have provided us. And so if you have needs in your regions, it's really great for us to know about those. It is an amazing thing for each of your regions to prioritize, in your CIP prioritizations, what the most urgent projects, what the best opportunities are in your areas. And I wish that we had a magic wand to turn around and deliver those for you, but delivering those projects depends upon the funding that the legislature provides for the work, whether that be maintenance work or whether that be new capital projects. And what I can offer, or what we can promise, is that we would love to be partners with all of you in advocating for those project needs. Advocating for an adequate size pie, essentially, that we don't all have to fight over for teeny little slices or no slice at all. To fight for an adequate size pie so that we can meet the needs that you all have identified.
I was reminded by Commissioner Chuck and Commissioner Collier and Commissioner Schellenberger about the size of where we live doesn't necessarily relate to the amount of traffic that we get. So Wallowa County gets 250,000 visitors in the summer. You think about, the traffic that's heading to Lincoln County. You think about, all of the traffic that is going north to south on Highway 97. I think oftentimes, and I've been learning about this over the course of the last 3 years, and so it was all fresh to me. And one of the things that honestly startled me was the difference between traffic and population and what a big deal it is. And I think as you're thinking about how to tee these discussions up,
and Commissioner Savas, we talk about this all the time. Mute check. Where are the cars coming from? Where are they going? They just happen to be passing through your jurisdiction. That, you know, this is all the kind of stuff that I think if we can get some clarity, and it will help legislators, I think, in really trying to understand what's happening, particularly out in our rural communities. But, you know, here, you know, Clackamas County, right in the middle of it, you know, you've got similar issues. So I don't think keeping score here that not one of you missed the word safety in your comments. You know, safety should just be top of mind as we're thinking about that. And whether that's speed, it's impairment, it's road conditions. I mean, we've got to join together on this traffic safety thing. That, you know, the number of deaths is way too high in Oregon. There's some things that we can do about it politically. People don't like to drive at the speed limit. People were driving at the speed limit. You think about what our death numbers would be. So, and I put myself in that category. I need to slow down. But I'll tell you one place I don't speed. It's in the construction zone. And I'm one of the few that is driving through at the posted speed limit these days. So the other thing I would say is, you know, two acts that I'm involved with, the Act and Region 1 Act. They're composed of, you know, different groups. The Act has complexities, and they're different complexities to what Region 1 Act has. And that maybe when we're thinking about, you know, how ODOT, how the commission can support the acts, we ought to take into consideration the real differences in terms of the composition and diversity of the acts that we have. If I was to offer all kinds of additional resources to the NEAC, they'd probably, you know, never invite me back to a meeting. They'd just soon not have me. But there's probably some resources, Commissioner Savas, that when we talk about, you know, the structure and decision making and turnover and that, you know, are good things to talk about. So I'd love to pursue this with you further to see, you know, how maybe we can be supported.
Well, let me start out by thanking all of you for your time commitment to transportation issues in your community and the state as a whole. It's really important. It makes a big difference in the communities, and a lot of people forget sometimes that the road system is very important to the economy of the state, and people forget that a lot. You know, so we're an exporting state and we're an importing state, and we move a lot of goods around the area. So, and jobs depend on that. I want to comment on two things, and then I have a question for the freight people. What I heard loud and clear from you were really two things. I mean, everybody has their favorite project, but what I heard above all else is safety and preservation of what we got. And we always get confused in the transportation business. We use the word maintenance, operations, and preservation. And nobody knows what that means. I've become convinced of that. And what we're really thinking is just protect and keep what we've got. So that's a big issue. And I would say that, you know, I spent 40 years around the legislature, not 40, 30, a little over time. And you're not that old. I am that old. One of the things that I always tell people is the time when you can get the legislators' attention is right now, when they're not in session. Once they're in session, you can't get to them for more than 10 or 15 minutes. I would encourage each of you to take the time to have coffee with your local representative or senators and tell them about your acts plan and what's important to you. I think frankly, most of them aren't thinking about transportation, and they don't know what the need is out there, except for when they drive around. So I would encourage you to do that, because you all know that we can't get to the list that we have in front of us, list that, you know, we prioritized it. That's the top stuff. It just isn't the money to get there. On the preservation side, same thing. I've been, I live in Springfield, for those who don't know, and I have grandkids in Portland. So I'm making that trip up I-5 pretty frequently. And I have for the last 30-some years. I've never seen I-5 in as rough a shape as it is today. It's just wearing out. It's just, there's a lot of traffic on it. And I've become fond with saying that roads are like shoes, they wear out. And we have to fix them. So that's that. And I, again, appreciate your help in all of this. And my commitment is to try and keep the system going and improve it as we can. Now for my question. One of the things that we've talked about for all the while I've talked about transportation over the years is the need to get more trucks off the road that are carrying containers and onto the trains. And the comments that Ross and David made this morning suggest to me that we're not doing a very good job of that. And one of the things that I have noticed, I've started counting as I drive up I-5, the number of those blue trailers with the swoosh on it. I'm moving up and down, and it's seldom between Springfield and Eugene that I don't count at least 10 of those trucks. So I know it's out there, and the reality is what we know about trade, what's happening, the battle for retail minds is most of it's moving to online, which means there's more trucks on the road, or will be. Both delivery trucks and freight trucks get it there. So my question to you two is, what's happening, and is there anything that we can do to change it, since our policy is to do exactly the opposite of what's happening?
Like this. It's a good question. I think I'll try not to filibuster myself here, but I think largely they're macroeconomic forces rather than just necessarily right in Oregon. I mean, I hope there's no one in the room that's offended if I make a remark about the trucking industry, because we do work collaboratively with them. But we would argue at the rail industry that we as Americans have largely subsidized our largest competitor in the trucking industry in terms of the gas tax. That hasn't been raised, was in 1991, I think, the federal gas tax increase. So it's been a long time since that we've done that as a country. And so you've seen a slow erosion, along with the railroads generally have said they're not interested in the 2 to 3 cars at a time business. So you've seen, coupled with changes in the Oregon economy over time, just a slow devolution of freight on the railroads, and certainly on short lines, as I mentioned. I do think, what could we do? I say this all the time. You as commissioners, lawmakers, members of various acts, you could hate me, David, which is impossible. But if you like fewer trucks on public roads, and you want thriving rural communities, investing in shoreline railroads is a great way to reduce wear and tear on public roads. The reason for that is we primarily, as short lines, and David can speak to this, compete against trucks. The larger railroads are interested in moving freight 500 miles, 1,000 miles. Our short lines, we compete in that same lane of traffic, 400 miles or less. And we've seen we've come to a place where we're in a state of good repair, but in order for us to make kind of transformational type investments on our railroad, we need public assistance, public-private partnership. There's just no way for us to produce the kind of revenue that we need to, say, invest in a railroad that can move faster than 10 miles per hour to attract new business. I think on the horizon, there's some exciting technology things. We've been working on electric bogie vehicles as a company to help compete against trucks. So I think, to answer your question, it's in all of the above strategy, but I agree that it's a problem. We can see it in the data, and I'm looking at Eric on the back maybe to help save me here, but public-private partnerships, but that, of course, we're competing against all of the important information they provide.
Yeah, I think you got it all there, Ross. I guess just a couple comments to add on to that is one of the big things that's been going on here economic wise. Right? Okay. I feel like I'm eating this thing. I think one of the big things that's been happening in the
just economic world is that there has been a freight recession that has affected the trucking industry, which has also affected the rail and all the transportation. So it drives the rates down, which normally you would think that would be a good thing, but we actually need the rates to go up. So this way there can be more investment and more things to go in there to make the rail more competitive. That's more on an economic side, more than the state side. But to Ross's point, we really, on the specifically talking about rail, really need infrastructure improvements. And that goes along with our highways too. I mean, I'm going to talk about this when it gets to the Oregon Freight Advisory Committee, but it's also fixing some of the systems that we have. We have a major challenge right now for not only like rail, but also on the trucking side with the Rose Corridor, the Columbia Bridge. These are major issues that are affecting our state and are affecting rail transportation, and it affects everybody in the state because everything has to go through that bottleneck. And if we can put some resources into focusing on those bottlenecks, I think that will alleviate quite a bit. More?
I had one quick thing. Yeah. I mean, we look at the coast, right? There were 4 routes to the coast from a railroad perspective not that long ago. We operate the Portland Western. We stop at Juana now, doesn't go to Astoria. The Port of Tillamook Bay, that railroad is closed. They don't even connect to each other anymore. We still operate at the Portland Western out to Toledo, but we don't go any farther. That section of the railroad, is one business closure away from abandoning that line. And then, of course, the Port of Coos Bay and the rail line that connects there. And that's been a huge investment from the state to get that railroad up to speed, literally. So preservation, like you were saying, of rail is also important because trying to permit a new railroad just that's never going to happen. And so protecting what you got is extremely important.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think this is a good example from Ross and David on just sticking kind of thematically, or what are some of the key issues, where are some areas and opportunities to really invest or preserve, in this case, key infrastructure that really supports some of our objectives and outcomes. Chair, anything else you want to add? And then we'll do open.
Of course, I can't keep myself from talking. One of the things that has been brought up repeatedly here is that all of us are competing. And we go to our local legislators and we try to get our projects. I want you to think a little differently about this. And so I'm going to challenge you. You have these 3 questions. What is your biggest challenge? What is your biggest opportunity? What is your greatest need? What if this is a perfect world, but I have all of you captive here? What if we worked really hard as a commission act? And I'm talking about modals, I'm talking about everything safety. And we came up with a concept for the package. And we identified what it was we're trying to get done. And I want you to think outside of the box. So when you talk about safety, and I've heard, how many times have I heard speed, driving off the road, fatality? Why are we not pushing compliance? Why are we not pushing Oregon State Police as part of the narrative of increasing patrolling and shutting this down? We don't do those things. So I want you to think a little bit outside the box when you're thinking about the opportunity. And we need to come up with a really good narrative. And I know that at some point, maybe Susan's going to speak about the visioning group and the subgroups, but also plugging into those and having those conversations to make this work. So I'm going to stop there.
Great. So I think the chair had a fantastic pivot here. So in a way, look at the 2 questions as the collective kind of need building and also problem solving, right? And so instead of what is your, from an individual committee standpoint, what is our statewide, our shared, what are some of those strategies that can really make a difference? I think the chair talked about enforcement is one. We do have some transportation safety grants that we provide to enforcement, but it's certainly not keeping pace with the needs that we have out there and some of the lack of safety issues. So I think at this point in the conversation, flip your cards up if you have something to say. Let's keep it a fairly thematic level. I know you were each given these questions. You created a slide. Those are in the slide deck. Those will be available to the commission, to the public to see if there's something you want to pull out of that. Great, do it verbally. But I think to the chair's point, what are some of the things nutty issue wise, thinking collectively, geographically, multimodally, topically, are those all words? And try to figure out what are those key priorities that we really need to narrow in on, and those themes that we can take back that Susan can share with the transportation funding needs and say, as a diverse group across the state, we think these things are absolutely critical. So go ahead and start flipping name cards. We'll go around the room with mics, and I'll start with Commissioner Savas there. There's a mic behind you.
So, thank you. I just want to just close out the freight conversation a little bit and rail just a little bit. We have a number of short lines in our area. Of course, the Portland area's got a lot going on. We have the Port of Portland, obviously. We got T6 container ship traffic. There's containers everywhere, but some of those destinations are in the Portland area where those containers are dropped off and where they're picked up to load on a ship. 2 weeks ago, I visited Gunderson Marine, and they are building barges literally to carry containers up and down the Columbia because it's cheaper and faster than it is to go down rail right now, because the intermodal rail traffic is intense in our area. Almost every train that goes by is contained. It's car after car with containers. So there's a lot of activity that's going through our area. And yet our road system and the trucks that have to move through there are still in this very confined. There hasn't not been any major investment, capacity investment in our region for a very, very long time. And our population has really doubled since I've been here, more than doubled. So Commissioner Baker knows this, and I kind of touched on it a little bit. We have a very diverse area and a lot of diverse beliefs. And I think part of the challenge is politically to get anything across the finish line is that whether it's a jurisdiction or another jurisdiction, I won't say fighting, but lobbying for their particular project, there's also ideology and politics in place that's saying, no, we don't believe in roads. We believe in bike pits. So we have these differing things, and we go there, not we, but our region goes there with all these mixed messages, and we're very divided. And I don't know how we conquer that, but that shows up the act all the time. It shows up at a number. I sit on almost every regional transportation committee there is in the area up there, and we battle this all the time. It's a reality I just seen grow and grow and grow. And I remember when Chair Van Brockman was the chair of the OTC, and there was a big project, a very big project, and Portland people filled the room. Not jurisdictional people, but some of these advocacy groups, special interest groups, filled the room and really killed that project. And the governor, a couple of days later, said, pause on this large, big project. That's what we're fighting a little bit. I think it's politics. I don't know if there needs to be a stronger organization around jurisdictions coming together. In our Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, we do just that. We try to come together. But again, I think the obvious is there's very few resources, and so therefore we are all struggling, and the pot needs to get bigger. We understand that, but I don't know if there needs to be some kind of law laid down. I won't say law, but essentially that fortunately, this amount of dollars that go towards bike ped, this goes this much to freight, this much, somehow, some guidance to say that there's clarity versus really this situation we really have, which I believe is really a lot of uncertainty, and there's not clarity as to what the proportion used to be. It used to be very clear what the proportions of bike ped was and how, but that's just eroded away lately. So the priorities that coming from the OTC, I'm not blaming anyone by it, but over the years have kind of changed. And I don't disagree with safety. I've lost family members' safety. We talked about that. It's terribly important, but just imagine an undersized system and you double the population and you have people from all around the region, all around the state coming to put a work in our area. We got roads with miles of congestion, 2-lane roads, Highway 212, miles of congestion coming into work, and then on the way back, same thing on the way home. And that's just 212 and 220. I can name them all. So we just haven't had the investment in capacity, and that's just loading us all up, and it makes our roads more dangerous. because of capacity issues. We have spillage off the freeway. It's faster to cut off the freeway and find all these side roads, which are country roads. And people are driving through neighborhoods. And in the urban area, they're driving through neighborhoods with kids that are playing out, riding their bikes out on the street. The capacity issue is a huge thing. And don't call it congestion, call it for what it is, the capacity, the spillage into local roads. And that's what's creating the safety issue for us. Sorry, it was so long-winded.
Thank you, Commissioners Delasco, Nikki, and then Commissioner Horst, and then Commissioner Lawson.
Okay, let me remember my thoughts here. So I don't know how to do this, but we need to get politics out of transportation because the transportation system's now been weaponized in the red versus blue fight all over the state, and we've totally lost track of what we're trying to accomplish. We're fighting over a 6-cent gas tax, and gas has gone up $2 in my area in the last, since the beginning of the year. So I heard a lot of people praise the CORE program. We love it. It is so helpful to our airport. And that was an aviation fuel tax, right? You have to identify what's going to pay for all the things that we need. And I don't know how to get the politics out of it. I would love to say I can go to my representative and he's going to support that. It's not true. They are very much in this political fight, and transportation is being held hostage. To me, it feels like the biggest issue right now in the governor's race that we're talking about this transportation gas tax. So I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to remind folks that we all need the transportation system. And really for us, how do we collaborate so that we feel like rural voices are going to be heard? Because I love the solution that we have to our reps, but that's not always a straight course for all of us to get our voices heard. And it may not be the biggest thing that is on there. So how do we work together to bring these things forward? Because we're all facing the same issues. They just vary a little bit. And road capacity issues are different than our capacity issues. And part of that's our housing policy, right? We just keep trying to stuff more people into metro areas. So anyway, sorry, I lost some of my train of thought, so I will hand off.
Thank you.
I will be really remiss if I don't mention for my friend Brant that we still have a problem buying trucks in Oregon, right? We still have policy that prevents people from replacing their freight vehicles in Oregon.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. So I want to go back to what Mr. Lane mentioned about the rails, short rails. Short rails are almost impossible to put in. And just that thought that they got placed to me in a meeting you and I by another person. Can you imagine trying to put I-5 in today or a freeway anywhere? Something that would shorten our life and increase, it would be almost impossible. So as we're talking about this, one of the biggest challenges, money and priorities. The funding, but historically we selected projects by similar breakdown politics or by the priorities or goal weights. And Amanda, you can correct me, but I think these goal weights that we've got for this came across from a survey of the public. And the number one thing is 38% safety, 28% is state of good repair, maintaining what we currently have, then 15% mobility and transit, 10% for environmental and equity. Why doesn't funding follow those goals? I mean, if we follow those goals with funding and scoring, then we're going to be looking, because we all have in Highway 97s, we have Highway 22. It's one of the most popular routes to the coast because people come to see our beautiful capital. They hit out 22 to the beach. They got to stop at the casino. Spirit Mountain's one of the #1 tourist attractions we have. And there's constantly tickets being written at over 110 miles an hour on that road. And it's just family roads there. So OSP has increased since there's not a legislation. Our new lieutenant has taken the officers out of the capital. He's put them out there on the highway and they're watching 22 and 99. Our traffic speeds have slowed down drastically in the last 2 months because of those efforts. It's worked amazing. That's something we do all the way state across. Next, biggest opportunity. How about giving relevancy back to the acts? 20 years ago, every act got to come to this meeting and they got to provide their number one project and they got put on the SIP. Today, we all want to throw everything in there, but nothing is put on the SIP. We talk about equity and across the state. Well, if every act got to have their number one project listed on that to be built, now we've got that equity statewide because every area is being beside, regardless of population, but because we all have those same needs. And then lastly, funding decisions, selections based on that found preferred scenario. Those goal weights are spot on. Everybody in this room will look at those and all agree. This is really what we're all about, as we're trying to gain. So I really think going to our representatives and senators, I talk to them every week, constantly with our ODOT staff. Our local crews work tirelessly. They're all working on 6 or 7 projects, trying to get things done. But it's the political ends of it that confuse and draw us away from what our goals are and our focus. And we need to just get back to that focus and maintain it. I loved your suggestion, getting a group together, creating that thing, and then taking it back to the legislature so let them understand and hear what's happening here on the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So for those that may be curious on the goal weights that Commissioner Morhorst talked about, those are from the capital investment plan. They were set by the Transportation Commission. They were directly a result of every entity around this table contributing and saying these are what the priorities are. So that will drive our investments in terms of what we prioritize and focus on. And I think to your point is a great primer for other things. I just wanted to give some context there for what that is. So we'll go with Commissioner McLaughlin and then Adair, Chuck, and Collier.
So I'm from the Southeast Act, Mount Harney and Grant County. So our biggest challenge is maintaining and preserving our roads. You know, we're so worried we're not going to have enough money to be able to make a difference on all those miles and all those roads. So that's our biggest challenge. Our biggest opportunity, this is for Ross and David. We have a brand new reload facility in Nissa, Oregon, $40 million. That would be an awesome thing for Mount County to open up, to get that rail system going. It's mired in a bunch of stuff. So that's our biggest, hugest opportunity for Mount and maybe even the region around there. Talking about getting the trucks off the road, that would make a huge difference. And then of course, Highway 20 and 26 safety projects. We're talking about it all around the state, safety projects. And those are the things that we're focused on, is making Highway 20 and 26 more safe.
Thank you. So we'll go over here to Commissioner Adair and then Chuck.
Thank you so much. In 2019, I was testifying about the Oregon State Police. The numbers we had 800 in 1980. What do we have today? I mean, it is so bad. And I feel like that is really something that we all in this room can really push for. In 2019, it didn't work. Like, have I given up? No. I just was talking to someone in Safeway who happened to be an EMT in Lynn County. She goes, oh my gosh, do not drive in the center, in the left lane when you're going down the 2-way. We just had a major head-on fatality. People are driving so fast. Speed is such an issue. If we could get more state policemen out there, I really feel that would help. And then in 2022, I was actually working on getting 600 freight trucks off of Highway 97 by increasing the Burlington Northern line right there in Gilchrist. I was really disappointed it didn't happen. I tried to make it happen. If we can use, railroad instead of Highway 97 and some of our other highways, I think it would be so beneficial to all the citizens of Oregon if we could slim down the traffic we have going, but we need more officers out there. I love the story that you said, it's slowing people down. We've got to slow people down. And then I do want to say something about Tombstone. I don't know if you've ever been up there, but I've driven that twice at night, like a week ago. Oh my gosh, that road, has anybody touched it in a while? So would love to see that, all those little bumps. It's like a roller coaster. And anyway, we've got to do some maintenance up there, make it safer.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I'll just note too, as we talk about things like safety and speeding, for example, there's a number of different ways to address that, from enforcement to also, we've talked about photo radar enforcement. particularly within work zones and more broadly. Those are pretty controversial topics that we've had many legislative conversations about, in a way that if safety is one of our top priorities, we have multiple voices coming to the table and saying, this is a cost efficient, effective way that we can do it, that can be pretty powerful.
I just wanted to say, I have driven 96,000 miles in the last 4 years, and I know where every pothole is in the state. So 96,000 miles.
And how many miles?
Oh.
How many sets of shopping centers?
Oh, my gosh.
I think main thing I would say number 3 is, what's the purpose of transportation? It's to move people, goods efficiently, safely, and to the greatest benefit of all. That means not just taking a step back from your act and, I find improvements that makes it easier for everybody to get around, makes it safe for everybody. 97, that's a big deal. 97 gets improved. You could take some trucks off I-5. Highway 20 goes all the way across Oregon and all the way to Boston. And the last thing, I'm going to put my port commissioner hat on. Green transportation is the most efficient and easiest way. You don't have to repair the ocean.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's my port hat. You have rail going down to Coos Bay. Huge investment there. They want to get some containers out of there. Can we look at that? The Port of Newport, was on Port Commission. Let's try and get some bridging out of there. Take some of those trucks off the road. Use the ocean. And I did not know that Port Portland was looking to do more out of there. Get those barges from Newport, bring them in up into the metro area. We need to find better ways to do these things, and if we don't have the capacity, it's going to be very costly to increase capacity on the roads or on the rail. Let's look at the ocean. We have 3 deep water ports. We have an incentive through the state to fund those deep water ports, and we have made a lot of investment in them. We're in Astoria, they have logging exporting. That's an up and down, but let's look at other ways to get things around. And instead of putting them on the rail, putting them on the road, let's use the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So Commissioner Collier, do you still have comments? Great, and then we'll go Commissioner Garrett.
So for our area, our challenges are putting together those CIP projects. It's really hard when we know we're so underfunded, and trying to prioritize safety. This family over that one, these people over that one. It's a really, really tough job. Another big challenge that we have that Commissioner Baker brought up, and I really appreciate it, it's overcapacity, overloads for the roads that we do have. We have amazing beauty and amazing things that people are headed for 6 months out of the year. Our populations are exploding, well, they're getting there on the state highways, the county highways, the city the city streets. And we're thankful to have them, but I wouldn't say that it's safe. So that's really tough. So the overcapacity, our opportunities, I want to do a shout out to our ODOT staff. Honestly, our ODOT staff's amazing. They're working hard, they're resilient, they're creative, they're working in the funding gaps, all of those things. And we don't have enough of them. So opportunities is that we need more boots on the ground. And then I would say what everybody else said is the aging infrastructure and all of that. But at the root of that, I think our biggest opportunity is collaboration. It's been said many times, how can we mobilize as a group to share this load? Patty keeps talking about Highway 97. Yes, I agree. In Highway 97, it doesn't go through Wallowa County. It doesn't go through Umatilla County. But are people dying on it? Yes, they are. Do our people drive Highway 20? Absolutely. I-5, 84. We share these roads. It's our responsibility together to collaborate and figure out how to keep our people safe and where the priority is. Because our priority doesn't stop at the county line. It's all of our responsibility.
Thank you. And Commissioner Garrett.
Our biggest challenge, the Northwest Act, somewhat caused by the region next to us in Multnomah County and some of the priorities like the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on the I-5 bridge that is going to cost who knows how many billions. The Rose Quarter project that just seems kind of shiny to create some new green space over that section of I-5. Neither one of those help capacity through downtown Portland, I-5 through Portland, which creates capacity issues in Columbia County because all of those coming from Washington that need to get through Portland have figured out that they can bypass Portland by coming through Columbia County on the 2-lane highway that causes maintenance, safety issues, and provides no economic benefit for our area. It also has an impact with politics. Politics maybe shouldn't be, transportation and politics maybe should be separated. But when the voters see these massive projects in the Portland metro area that just seem to get higher and higher price tags and don't get anywhere, that impacts voter sentiment on voting for something like 6 cents. Also, it's not transportation, but overall voter sentiment for any sorts of tax when we're labeled one of the least tax-friendly states in the nation. So that impacts all of our abilities to get transportation funding because every new tax ask is just another one, and our reputation is not good nationwide. So something to consider there. And the fix to all this is economic development, but Oregon is not a place that industry wants to move to right now until we fix that reputation. In Columbia County and through the Northwest Act, we have some of the most available shovel-ready industrial land to develop, but we're seeing industries leave the state. And if those industries would come and expand here, come here and expand here, many of these tax problems will be solved without having to raise taxes whatsoever. So,
Casey, I have a question for you. And I think some of what you just brought up on economic development is going to be addressed by the visioning group. I think that that's one of the areas they're looking at. But the question is, in Region 1, when you guys are prioritizing, you've got some problems because you have I-5 Bridge, Rose Quarter, what else is Abernathy, 205. You have those 4 projects.
Bridge.
And Boone. Okay, so those were identified early on. Are they in your top priorities?
Yeah, yes, actually,
Okay.
actually, most of them are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we pulled those out of your top priorities, because we know that those are things that we have to complete or that legislators are saying we need to complete. So you're not responsible for it. They're mega projects or whatever. So ODOT has to deal with those. Would you have a different list?
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to see. That's what I'd like to see. I don't know about the rest of the commission, but we already know that the legislators have told us as a commission that we have to deal with that. But you also have local roads, you have other things that are attached that aren't even being addressed because you're putting those as priorities. And for me, as a commissioner, I'd like to know what those other priorities are.
Can I make one comment? I'm just going to kind of condense what I said earlier, but make it really clear. You're all going around to safety. I know that's really important. I know it's important personally to me and others, so I'm not just dismissing or discounting that whatsoever. But I watch our ACT members talk about that. We looked at some of the projects, and you know what? They all think they're safety projects. Almost every project is now looked at as a safety project, so it blurs everything. It fogs it up. I'm just wondering if there was a modal apportionment, a set amount of dollars that was towards this mode, all these different needs, if that will take some of the politics and the fighting away from what we're challenged with in our region, or probably the statewide, right? Just throw that out there.
I did want to address the Rose Quarter issue, because we hear that a lot, and I think a lot of people don't understand that project or where it came from. That's not an ODOT project. At least it wasn't an ODOT originated project. That was a project that was part of HB 2017 and directed by the legislature. And the reason it was directed was because in 2016, when that vision panel, I guess it was actually a vision panel, and then the legislature toured the state, the business community said their number one priority in the state was resolving the congestion in the Portland area at that intersection. And that's how that project got on the list, and why the legislature did it. However, the original project is not the one that's there now. And that actually came about as a function of what community in the Portland area that actually Commissioner was talking about, Salas was talking about a little earlier. That's what the community came up and said they wanted, and that was their price of admission to get into the game, doing that. So that's where that came from. And the other thing I would say is that project in 205 originally was intended to be paid for by tolling. And when the legislature did that in the 205 projects, they appropriated, when they looked at it philosophically, they said some of that project is for through traffic and ought to come out of the state fund. And the other portion of the project should be paid for by the people who use it the most. And so that's where the tolling came with, the idea that anybody who drove on it's going to pay for a portion of it. So that's just background, just want people to know that.
Well, I appreciate that, but regardless of the intention, the design that people can look at right now is frankly embarrassing. That's where our priorities look like they're going, and the money's coming from somewhere and it's impacting the rest of the state. And the people in Columbia County could care less about some more green space over the highway without additional capacity. So thank you for the history lesson there, but I think it's still a detrimental project to the rest of the state.
Good point, but remember that the OTC and ODOT.
Yeah.
Change that.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, good conversation. So we're gonna go Kate, and then David, and then Mike, and then Ross. We'll do a little ping pong here.
Sorry, I was a little late today. I think for PTAC, for public transit, our biggest challenge is also our biggest opportunity. And I think even listening to this discussion, I think sometimes it's really hard to show, sometimes transit gets very isolated. It's like, oh, transit is over there in a corner by itself. And it's really hard to remember how important it is as a part of the whole system. And to make sure that everyone in the public knows, taxpayers know how valuable the transit system is to the whole system. I think, a lot of people in our communities right now, when gas is over $5 a gallon, are really thinking about transit, but it's still not seen as a core product and part of the transportation system. And as I've been listening to everyone today, transit is safe compared to a lot of other things on the roadway for riders. And so I think really thinking in terms of, are we utilizing this resource that we have in our communities? I think it's very important. Remember, we already have this resource in place in many of our communities. It's a lifeline for many of our members of our communities, and it gets siloed away from thinking about the whole system. So I would say that's kind of our biggest opportunity and challenge, and kind of our greatest need all at the same time from the transit community. Is to be thinking about how we can be more incorporated into thinking multimodally about safety and about, if we get one bus on the road and people are actually riding it, that's a lot less cars on the road. That's a lot less wear and tear on the roads. And I think sometimes folks forget about that. So I would say I also just want to say, one of our biggest opportunities, I've only been in the transit world for a relatively short time, maybe 6 or 7 years at this point, and there's nobody that works better together than transit operators. I think if any of you have worked with transit operators, it's amazing. I can message somebody and that I've never spoken to and just say, hey, how did you buy this bus? And they respond within 5 minutes. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And just, and that happens kind of at the organizational level, and lots of folks talking to each other from across the state who have very different priorities and different groups that we're serving, but all working together. And then I think it happens at the very local level where our bus driver, if he's picking up a rider and he knows that, because I operate rural transit and we're going to be 5 minutes late for a connection, before he gets on the road, he can send a quick text to a different transit operator from a different service and say, I'm running 5 minutes late, but I've got a rider that's going to make your connection. And that driver will wait 5 minutes. And again, this is service that runs once or twice a day, because you really, 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 really impact that rider for the positive. And so I think those are the sorts of tiny little things that happen that like work together that I often don't think people hear about or know about, and just kind of how it's a little bit just folks working together as Commissioner was talking about. So, but I think that's probably the biggest opportunity is looking at the transit group and saying this has been underfunded for years, but they figured out how to make the best of what is available. So.
Okay, and next to you for David.
I thought we were bouncing. I go.
David. Sorry, I think David and Mike and then Rob.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up a few things with the Oregon Freight Advisory Committee that we're looking at as far as like some of the challenges, some of the things I brought up on the Rose Corridor. Obviously, you already know about those projects. Those are big key projects for moving freight around the state. I guess some of the other big things that I was just listening around the room. One of the things I hear about, like on the marine side, yes, you don't have to maintain the ocean, but you got to maintain the docks to put the cargo onto the barges or whatever on that. And one of the challenges that we have on the Oregon Freight Advisory Committee, especially like when we're reviewing like Connect Oregon projects, especially when they're involved with marine, we don't have any good solid data points on where things should be with the marine system. And so one of the things that we're going to be looking through and reviewing is having a marine plan. Rail has a plan, highway has a plan, all these modal divisions have plans, but marine doesn't. And so that's going to, I think that will help us going in the future, especially when we get into some decision making. One of the other things that I want to bring up about Connect Oregon is I was really sad to see that at least it didn't get eliminated, but it was gutted. And that was a big blow. That's huge dependent on a lot of these modes that aren't highway dependent. And there's a lot of rail depends on it, marine depends on it, airports depend on it. And it was a big thing. One of the big things that I've been advocating the last, I don't know, about 5 years or so is doing a federal match program. There is a lot of federal dollars going out right now. There is marine, there is rail, there is airport. There's all these funding sources out here. And one of the things that I see is having a match program, especially like on the private side. And I can speak to rail because I haven't been heavily involved with it. But there's a CRISI grant application. There's $2.5 billion that's coming from the feds. That's going to be the applications are due at the end of June. And some of the projects are here in Oregon. They need to put a match component. They have big projects and they can go after those federal dollars, but they don't have the matching component to go after that. And so Connect Oregon was one of those pots. And unfortunately, it got gutted right at the worst possible time because, like I said, there's $2.5 billion that's going to be going out there, and I would really like to see a lot of specifically railroads, but I know that the ports have and Marine has applied for those funding sources, and they used the Connect Oregon matching program as part of that. I know that that's not you guys' responsibility, but I know that it's just a huge component of a potential funding source. And I think that was, the other big thing that I see coming up in this state that's going to have a major impact across the entire state, transportation, freight wise, it's going to affect almost every single act, every single mode. That's going to affect the OTC. That's going to be the municipal solid waste. We have Coffin Butte is closing, or it's going to be, they did not get their extension. And there is all the surrounding counties depend on Coffin Butte. So when Benton County makes a decision that affects all of the neighboring counties, Washington County has a major problem. Multnomah County has a major problem. Rail can alleviate some of that, but there's a lot of infrastructure that is not in place to handle that. And it's going to be a major issue that's going to be coming up here in the next 5 or 10 years. And it's something that I think all of us, especially the ACTs, are going to have to take in consideration.
Great, thank you, David. I'll just note with the Connect Oregon match program, I mean, that one is where we can get a ton of return on investment by having some state dollars to match those federal funds. And just thank you to the commission for enabling the setup of that, because that was your decision that you made. So thank you. It's been-
Yes, that was a huge. And Connect Oregon is also one of the sacrificial lambs that
That's right.
is shoring up our basic maintenance funding because the legislature was not able to. The legislature
Is hosted.
members are not able, have not solved our maintenance funding problem.
Okay, let's go Mike Caro, then Ross, and then Commissioner Schillenberger, and then Victor.
So I guess one of our biggest challenges is the same as our biggest opportunity, and that's communication. So I want you to think about the success of the area commissions. So I think about in our area commission, we represent 2 counties. They couldn't be more philosophically diverse than any that I can think of. We have identified about $400 million in need. And yet for 30 years, after a lot of deliberation, we come up with a list of projects, priority projects unanimously. How did that happen? It's not an accident, it's communication. I'll tell you one thing that I've learned in 30 years of this business is that funding that comes and goes is very fluid. But maintaining the integrity of the system that you have is so critical, but it needs to be expanded. So I mentioned in my earlier testimony about the challenge that we have in dealing with the transportation planning rule. You raised that issue. Guess who everybody thinks that rule belongs to? To the OTC, it's your rule. No, it's not. It's a rule that belongs to the Department of Land Conservation Development. And it isn't infrequent that those 2 agencies don't find themselves in conflict. So part of the exportation of the success of the area commissions is to work collaboratively with the other state agencies. And I know that you have the regional solutions team that can lock you up and let you fight it out or go thirsty. But that's really not utilizing the success that you've got. So you think about what you've heard around this table today, and with everybody's testimony, none of us would agree that it isn't right and it isn't meaningful. So if I were going to offer a criticism of the department, is that we need to reach out to our transportation partners and to develop a collaborative communication issue. How many of our local folks think about freight? I'm on the freight commission. But if you think about which mode touches the lives of most Oregonians, it's freight. You get a hospital bed, no driver's license, you're dependent on freight. Public doesn't know that. We think about truck parking. What happens in our area when it snows in the Siskiyous, and we've got trucks parked everywhere. Public doesn't know that. So if there's going to be an investment that I think will yield results in the long run, but it'll take a long time, is having a robust communication protocol. Thank you.
Mike, Ross?
I just wanted to echo what I've heard around the table, and it's interesting that we, despite having individual conversations, developed a lot of the same opportunities and challenges. And, you know, I've been on the Rail Advisory Committee for 4 years. I'm from Montana and moved here 4 years ago, so I did know very much about the acts and the advisory committees. I'll be totally honest with you, I had no idea what happens outside the Rail Advisory Committee, other than talking to David and understanding that there is a freight advisory committee. I have presented to various acts on our Connect Oregon projects. Other than that, we've never communicated with each other. And I think there's a real opportunity to, there's a lot of synergies, a lot of the open seats that we looked at on the various acts. There's a freight rail member and there's lots of freight rail representatives, not just here, but, around the state and vice versa. We'd love to have some of the voices around this table on our Rail Advisory Committee. So I think there's some opportunities there facilitated by ODOT and with hopefully the help of you all in the commission. I'm not saying it should be once a month, but even a couple of times a year to produce a work product like you mentioned. I think that would be fantastic for this group to come around some solid recommendations to lawmakers as this body that we care about economic development, because I could not agree more with the commissioner that there's a revenue problem. And I think we can help solve some of that by increasing our tax base and increasing economic development opportunity rather than, taking the smaller and smaller pie to try to fund some of what we're talking about. So I signed me up for the ability for even the modal committees when the acts just to get together every now and then to discuss what our priorities are, to try to speak as one voice. And as much as the commissioner, it can be impossible to get a bunch of divergent viewpoints all rallied around a couple of themes, but I think we all care about safety and we all care about economic development. Having look, I drive around the state. My brother lives in Bend. He works in orthopedic trauma, and the number of people that come into St. Charles all dead or amputated legs or whatever from vehicle accidents, you name it. I mean, I take my 4-year-old daughter up to ski in Mount Hood Meadows every weekend, and the amount of times you see people off the highway, it's sad. We need opportunities in the state, and I think we all can agree on just a couple of things. And so I'm just repeating myself, but again, sign me up. I'm happy to help facilitate those types of things. So thank you.
You heard it.
Yep, all right,
Says don't pay money when I have debts.
yeah, right? Huh. Convenient. So we'll go to Commissioner Schollenberger and Victor, and then Dave. And I also just invite that this is a dialogue, right? So I'm gonna probably prioritize folks that haven't talked yet at the same time. Jump into the dialogue here. So if you have thoughts, want to add to a conversation, throw your name up. You're not limited to speaking once. So Commissioner.
I really like all the comments that have been made. I really liked your comments, Lyle, about projects rising to the top, one from each act. That meant a lot to me. And I like the percentage thing. You reinforcing that, Amanda, that that's the percentages we came up with. Let's use it. Things like that. I think that gains traction. I like that. Biggest challenge for me, for our South Central Act, is equity. The east half of our act has 0 projects. 0. So when I watch our local ODOT do work right now, I saw brushing sides of road. I saw restockpiling the center pit for next winter. I saw some sign replacement, and then I'm struggling for something else.
Bottling?
And it's no disrespect, but I don't want to offend employees of ODOT, but when you don't have projects going on, it's hard to be busy. It's hard to be excited about your job. It's hard to be wanting to go get it every day. And I see and I feel that because there's not a whole lot going on. And so I feel like that's one of our biggest challenges. We could use some equity, no matter, and I totally respect everything that's going on that Kate was talking about all the traffic going through Columbia County, things like that. But we've got traffic too, and would ask for a small supply. You guys have heard me talk about the South travel route. That I really feel is an opportunity, and it has indirect impacts. Got all that traffic going into Central Oregon right now, truck traffic trying to get to Highway 20. If you're a trucker in Medford, Oregon, how do you get east to go to Salt Lake, to go beyond Salt Lake? I guess you go to Klamath, you go north on 97, and then you go east on 20, or you go down to Redding, California, and you go on 80 and go over Donner Pass and get to Reno and go east that way. I just think if we invest in a safer and invest in a few of those pinch point projects on Highway 140, we could have a southern travel route. And I think it could help multiple acts and improve our transportation. Thanks.
Victor Hoffer here. First, Chair Brown and the Commission want to thank you for bringing us all together today. This is a big accomplishment. course, to come in and talk about our problems and our hopes and dreams. To answer these, our biggest challenge at OTSC and for the state of Oregon is less crashes, less fatal crashes. Behavior for number two is the biggest opportunity. We can adjust behavior through education, and we can adjust behavior through enforcement. What do we want from the commission? We would like you to know that we care about all modes of transportation, not just the cars. But all modes of transportation in the future will bring us bigger safety. But I want to bring hope. May I bring hope? I have a 90 seconds left. I can bring hope. First, Amanda Peace, you should get a lot of credit for all the support you give us at the OTSC. So thank you to Amanda. We have to focus on behavior. And where's the hope? All of you are saving lives today. You just don't know it. On the back of my business card, I have getting moms and dads, boys and girls, friends and family home safe today and every day, one day at a time. We might not know it, but you've all saved somebody's life today. I turned to a February car crash, a vehicle in the ditch. It was really over in the embankment when we arrived. What happened? We got the two adults out. Where's my child? I went down to find that child. It was in a properly installed car seat, still strapped in, not injured. That's our transportation safety office getting the message out to the people. That would be Amanda Mason, who's in charge of that. Mason doesn't know she saved a life. She just knows that she taught people. So we're all saving lives. We have hope for today and the future that what we do today, we'll never know it. Kelly Mason doesn't know that she saved a life, but I sure told her when I saw her. So thank you, Chair Brown and Commission, for bringing us together today and supporting us. And our Transportation Safety Office does give out grants. And we have money from NHTSA. We want to give it to you. We'll look on our website, ask for money. Thank you.
How much?
Oh, no, that's not my job.
Commissioner Shane.
Thank you, Chair Brown.
I just want to pick up on the theme of enforcement. OSP has come up a number of times around the table today. And I 100% agree that there are places where that roads would be a lot safer. That you don't need engineering fixes, you just need people not to be driving 98 miles an hour. So one of the things that I'm part of the efforts to explore safety improvements on Highway 97, and one of the things that we figured out was the way that OSP is funded probably has something to do with how much OSP you can provide across the state. And the learning was that right now OSP is funded out of the general fund. Yep. I could look around the table and just ask, how many things that are general fund funded have we seen go up in recent years? There's just more and more competition for the general fund. So, that raises a question about, is the general fund the right place to be funding the OSP out? A few decades ago, the OSP was funded out of the state highway fund. We also know that there's a lot of competition for state highway fund dollars at this point. So, maybe that's not, maybe that's not an answer either, but it's something to consider. Another really important thing to understand about OSP is that OSP does not keep ticket revenue when they issue citations. Many local governments, cities and counties, they decide how they are going to, what kind of a deal they're going to make with the devil on that, and whether it creates perverse things like that. But I would just put out there that if we are struggling to figure out how to adequately fund OSP to provide the levels of service that we need to keep our people safe across the state, that may be something that we need to consider.
And there's probably a whole bunch of other ideas that we should be kicking around, but general fund is clearly not keeping up with the need on safety funding for our OSP. And if we want that enforcement and education, OSP provides a lot of good education as well. We need to figure out how to adequately fund it.
You want to pass down like Vice Chair Byer?
The irony of that, Commissioner, is that OSP used to be funded out of the state highway fund.
Yeah.
Up until the early 1980s, when they initiated an initiative to take them out of the highway fund, put them in the general, because they thought it was a more solid funding base for them. And you're right, it's huge competition now. I don't know that we'll ever get to that. I mean, to put a new state trooper on the road probably is north of $150,000 a year. It costs a lot of money.
Do you know how many we have?
I don't know the number anymore. It's less than we had 20 years ago, but it's more than we had 10 years ago.
We used to have
It's been up and down. I remember that's been a constant discussions. I think one of the things that I had been opposed to for many years is photo radar. But I think that's something we are going to have to consider in terms of just financially, what can we do? It does work. It's working out of places. People hate it, but I guess I would argue if you're going more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, what's the problem?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Do you want to say something now? Or?
I do. Just listening to this gives me hope. And I want to share something with you. This morning when we were cutting the ribbon on the bridge, and it's a multimodal path. It is beautiful if you haven't had a chance to walk down there and look at the Van Buren Bridge. And I was talking to Pat Prescott from Hamilton Construction, and he was talking about that he went to Oregon State and he was in the engineering department. And I said, that's really interesting. What year was that? And he said, told me it was 1989. And I said, oh, were you at my talk? And he goes, what? And I said, back in 1989, I cut my teeth on trying to start a conversation about multimodal. And I was invited to come and speak to the engineering class on it. And it was really interesting because in the middle of it, right after lunch, a couple of them fell asleep and were actually snoring. These were engineers. And I was reflecting back on that because I was so discouraged. I left. And, my whole conversation with them was, how can we build a transportation system that addressed pedestrian, bicycling, transit? And now that I reflect back, it took 30 years, but that is a prime example of what we can do. Now, we may not be able to solve this problem in the next couple of years, but if we have the right group of people sitting around the table, and I'm looking at you because you're young, some of you, I won't look at you, Mike. Mike has been by my side all along too, encouraging me, but we will figure this out. But let's really try to challenge ourselves and think about the opportunity. So that's all.
Great, thank you. So that's a good segue. I'd like to see if anybody falls asleep while Dave Thompson here from the Bike Ped Committee talks about multimodal. Then we'll go around and address some of these questions. What I would suggest is maybe we take a short break thereafter and then do some concluding statements and kind of final thoughts. So Dave.
Thank you. So this has been a great discussion about how does enforcement play into safety. And I will tell you that I have spent quite a few hours in transportation safety action plan meetings. And the thing that always frustrates me the most is that you cannot have a discussion of, is it better to invest $100 million in a new roundabout, or is it better to invest $100 million in enforcement in terms of strictly safety? And I don't know always what the answer to that is, but you can't have that discussion. And unfortunately, just fixing OSP, if we could, won't solve that problem because from my bike ped point of view, at least, local roads are more important than state highways in most cases. And that enforcement, again, is totally funded in different ways from transportation. And so, you know, if we could somehow figure out how to combine transportation enforcement into transportation funding, I think maybe we'd have a better shot at figuring out how the best way to solve some of these problems. And I will also say that education is really important, but it's, you know, one of the best ways to educate people not to do the wrong thing if you were ever a child is to be told immediately and unequivocally when you do something wrong. And after a while, you stop doing that. So, you know, I don't know how we'll get there, but my thoughts. Real quickly, I just want to say that obviously one of our biggest challenges in bike ped right now is that bike ped and to a large extent transit is when things really get tight, start being seen by a lot of people as optional or just something that would be nice to have. Let's remember that a huge number of people in Oregon do not have the luxury of getting in a car and going where they need to go. And with gas prices doing what they're doing right now, even less people in Oregon have that option. We have to have a multimodal transportation system that allows all Oregonians to get where they need to go in a way that they can actually afford to do it. Working together, I absolutely agree, is the best way to do that. And I'm more than open to try and help in any way I can. But bike ped is not for people out trying to get a little exercise. Bike ped is for people who need to get somewhere. And let's keep that in mind.
And Dave, I think a point to illustrate that, because we talked about the Connect Oregon program and how some of the funding was redirected, a good portion of the bicycle pedestrian funding, both for community paths and for safe routes to school. So you think about something that's an argument that we could say many times, our kids deserve access to education. They deserve to get there safely. That's something that has strong support and rally around, and yet that was a program that was redirected. And so I think that just illustrates some of the belief in some of that mode and transportation system. Thank you. So let's go Commissioner Savis, Commissioner Chuck. I'm just going to keep on that and see what order y'all put it up in. Commissioner Garrett and then Commissioner Adair.
But as in order, I think Commissioner Garrett was ahead of me.
Go for it.
But anyhow, I just want to build a little bit on the transit discussion. There's a saying I heard when I got first elected to a county commission 15 years ago, when I went to the Association of Counties. It said, you've seen one county, you've seen one county. They're not all the same. We're all different. And so from a transit standpoint, I say that definitely in the tri-county area, you've seen one county, you've seen one county. The transit that's available in the county is stellar. Transit's available in Clackamas is far less. I mean, it doesn't even, I mean, it's poor, not unlike Columbia County, because we share a very similar, even Columbia County is quite a ways from Clackamas. The point is, Washington County is in the same boat. I used to say that we have, we're the only, we have the largest unserved transit population in the state. At 200-something thousand people don't have access to transit. Then I learned that Washington County is pretty close to us. They're also saying it's about 200,000. That's 400,000 people in a highly populated area. That's something to think about. But the commute shed issue, and where I'm going with this is the challenge is the state right now, our state legislators are passing laws, and next 2027 is not going to be much different. And they're trying to pave the way to build more housing, reduce requirements for infrastructure, or permitting, and they're racing towards that. But however, there's no money for infrastructure. There's no investment. They're saying, okay, we're going to eliminate parking because there'll be transit. Well, there isn't transit in a lot of Clackamas County. So we are finding that some of the homes that are being built and these projects are being built aren't even marketable because there's no place to park and there is no transit. So all to say, I think that, we need to coordinate with the state, and if they're gonna be passing laws that kind of impede our ability to actually serve, it complicates our transportation needs. All I'm saying, that commute shed, the homes that are being built in Woodburn, which is exploding, is impacting Clackamas County. Okay, it's impacting the Boone Bridge, it's impacting Wilsonville, it's impacting Stafford Road. We're building a $20 million traffic circle only because of the spillage off I-205. If that spillage wasn't happening, we wouldn't be saddled with a $20 million expense that no one's helping us with. Not Metro, not the state, not anyone. But we've been crying for transportation for 28 years. I've been on committees for 28 years. We have not even moved the needle in Clackamas County on transit, other than a little stub of a light rail line that is now being limited because TriMet's cracking, and a little stub in Milwaukee. And that's it. That's the only significant change. But that's another challenge we have to face. Chair Brown and I have talked about this. We've been in meetings with this. TriMet's in trouble. And I know not just TriMet, but others. But whether it's legacy debt or it's insurance or it's all these other things, we gotta think about our system. So we want to advocate for it, and yet where the dollars are being, maybe again, it's back to apportionment. If the dollars were directed in a fair way to each of the counties, I think we could do a better job. I know we can. I don't know who's next.
I'll go on, biggest opportunity, I think we talked about this at lunch, and I think the act, along with the commission, could do a little better job. Do a little outreach and education, we all have these conversations, things, right, and it doesn't make it out of here. I think we can all do a better job of saying, what we do here and how we can interact with the county commissioner, with the people I serve. What are we dealing with? I mean, the costs are going up astronomically, and the pot of money is getting a lot smaller. I think we need to be honest with people and say, look, we want to get these projects done, we're prioritizing them. But we pay the same amount of money that you do for a gallon of gas and so forth. And we are trying to get these projects done, but in a cost efficient way. Let people know and just be honest with them and say, well, we are trying to do with as much as we can with much shrinking a small amount of money. And I'm doing that with my budget right now with our county, but I think being honest and, we're fighting social media, ODOT didn't do this, county didn't do this, but we need a better job of what we're doing here. And what our people need to do to get these projects across the finish line. Just because they're on the list, it doesn't mean they get done. It's going to take advocacy. It's going to take a lot of work together with acts. I'm supporting something that's happening on 95. That's fine. I can do that. We just need to make sure that we're working together to make sure that we're improving the transportation system for everybody, as many people as possible, and get that out. What we're trying to do here.
May 97.
Sorry, 97.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry.
Follow up on enforcement. And I'd be surprised if the Northwest portion of Oregon is unique in this way. There's actually been plenty of funding for state law enforcement. We can't fill the positions. So marketing and recruitment, we've had half capacity with that area of state troopers because the folks that go after those positions would rather move to Phil's County over there, Deschutes County, or go somewhere nicer to live, whatever reason it is. We've actually had plenty of funding for state law enforcement, but folks don't want those positions. So how we solve that in this arena, I don't know. And then my second point's probably not going to be very popular. Cars are designed to go a lot faster and they're safer than they used to be. So I think with enforcement and with safety, we also have to consider sections of like the Highway 30 Autobahn between St. Helens and Portland. There's plenty of 4 lanes. It's perfectly safe to go 65 to 75, and it's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. So that would be the easiest place for us to ramp up enforcement, just because it's easy. But that won't necessarily be received well by folks either, because 55 is probably too slow in that area. So to consider technology, safety, and there are areas that you actually could speed up traffic a little and not cause problems.
So Commissioner Garrett, as the person having safety in my portfolio, I won't comment on your last. But on your first one, I actually had staff member look something up in terms of number of troopers in the state. And what I really was interested in is how do we compare to other states? This actually came up on Friday at the vision panel when I was showing safety data that shows horribly, Oregon ranks 43rd of all states for fatalities per vehicle mile traveled. So you're one of the worst states for loss of life on our transportation system. And the question is why? We talk a lot about enforcement here. From an enforcement perspective, we rank second to last in the amount of enforcement on our roadways. So that is definitely a contributing factor. Speeding is obviously an issue. Impairment and polysubstance are huge issues. Distracted driving is increasing, but I think Commissioner, your point, vehicles are helping to correct for some of those types of things. But there is a multifaceted approach we need to take. Thanks for those points. Commissioner Dare.
Thank you, Amanda, for those comments, because that's honestly what I want to hear. I just looked it up and it said it's 170,000 or 150,000 a year for a state police officer with the vehicle, et cetera. So 150,000, couldn't Oregon become the safest state? And, but I do want to point out that 2 weeks ago in USA Today, it said that Oregon and Massachusetts were the two highest tax states in the nation. So we clearly need to be spending our money wiser. Talking to you, we've got to spend our money incredibly wisely. And I do have excellent news. The roundabout in Palbu, I just got a text from Chris Doughty, my miraculous road director. He said it's like $5 million. That intersection is such a dangerous spot. And to spend $5 million and just make that safer, a mom and dad lost both of their boys. It was icy roads one day, but they were going over there. What a tragedy in January. I hate those kind of stories. So $5 million for that roundabout. It wouldn't have saved those boys' lives, but you know what? I know it's just terrible, terrible traffic over there. We've got a lot of Palbu is very busy, and then 126. A lot of people that live in Prineville work in Deschutes County or vice versa. So anyway, but we've got to make our state safer, and thank you for those statistics. Very helpful. Great job.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Morris?
Thank you. So here's a question I get asked a lot. With the judge's lawsuit on these handicapped intersection sidewalk adjustments, is being put in statewide, how much is that eating away at ODOT's budget every year? What is the total of that? And why is there such stringent requirements and policies embedded in this? The city of Dallas just did their entire downtown 2 years prior, and now they're dug up and they get new ones at a cost, and it looks the same, although we have different colored mats. We went from pink to yellow. So isn't there a way we could challenge that moving forward and getting that money? The ones that are already in place, leave there, but upgrade the ones that are not. I know this is real tough, and maybe there's no answer to this, but it's something just to think about.
Okay, Chairman, I'll take a little bit of heat here just to say, there's a significant portion of our statewide transportation improvement programs, or STIP, in the 27-30 biennium cycle, and previous to that has gone towards the ADA settlement and our compliance requirements that will go through 2032 to meet all those requirements. And that's where, while federal funding hasn't necessarily decreased in the near term, a lot of our federal funding has had to be redirected. And so that's where we get to the statement that we're basically maintaining interstates in 2027 and beyond. It's definitely come up in legislative conversations previously, but I'll let the chair take the heat of the policy.
No, I think you. Actually, I think she covered it well. I think that all of us, it's twofold. First of all, for anybody that it is disabled and is trying to use the system, it's a welcome thing. I mean, if you've ever been in a mobility device and you're trying to get from point A to point B, and there was a lawsuit. So we responded to the lawsuit, and this is the result. It is what it is. As far as the digging up of the ADA, that happened in a lot of communities, a lot of cities and counties got also sued at the same time that ODOT did. there was, it was established what the grade was going to be and how you laid those out, but it was new to contractors who were trying to do this. And if you were off just a little bit, which I think we should have challenged a little bit. Because with mobility devices the way they are today, they could have taken that little bit of difference. But I'm not gonna get into that because we could debate it all day long. But we will get through this. There is, light at it, but it has been a frustration for the commission because we've had to give up a lot to be able to put towards this, as counties and cities have too. So pat yourself on the back as far as you've actually increased mobility for people that have no other choice, but it has been extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
Better rolls her eyes because my question is in between us leaving, but how would the commission like to be made aware of? Oftentimes the industry, whether it's trucking or on the marine side or airports or on the rail side, we fight regulation or what we view as bad regulation or bad regulatory action or legislation that can severely impact transportation system in Oregon. And there's no better example than the California Air Resources Board's in-use locomotive regulation. The industry successfully sued the state of California, and that rule was rescinded. However, that would have required all locomotives be zero emissions by 2030. That was approximately an $80 billion compliance regulation. Anyway, that would have eliminated some shorelines in California, including those that operate, big surprise, we operate across state lines. So we had heard that Oregon was next in line. Had California successfully obtained a Clean Air Act waiver request, it would have come to the state of Oregon and Washington thereafter. So I don't know how else to ask that question. Just how would you like to be made aware? Because there are, there's bad things that can happen that would severely impact the transportation system and some of the goals of the state rail plan and the state transportation plan and implementation plan. So.
Well, I think David raised his hand when you talk about the trucking industry, in the vehicles. You also see that in the transit agencies, et cetera, as regulatory comes into play. Again, people have great ideas where they want to see something implemented. Problem is technology isn't there yet. The fuel system, if you wonder why the West Coast is so, the cost of diesel is so high or gasoline, California, who does a lot of our refinery, have put themselves in the corner. And so the Western states are now paying for that. We want to know about it, and I think you could write a letter to us is one way if you don't want to come and testify. But writing a letter to the commission, we receive all of those things. Now, we can share it with our legislative council that actually goes in and talks to legislators and works on that. I think that's one way, and just we can even make it an item on our agenda. And I don't know if the rest of the commission has other ideas, but I mean, I'm always open. Some of the things that we've talked about as a commission is transportation issues are getting harder and harder. And as a commission for a while there, we were only meeting every other month. Now we're starting to ratchet up where we're meeting once a month. We used to, as a commission, when I first came on, we used to do a day and a half. We may have to step it up as volunteers to be able to get everything on the agenda, but I think the timing is, if we don't start working these problems out and making people aware of them and educated, we're not going to get anywhere. So please write us letters. If you have a burning issue, like the trucking industry wants to come and talk to the commission, let us know, let the staff know, and we'll get it on our agenda. I see Commissioner Baker.
Each week, our administrative support provides us with a letter that includes updates that have happened during the course of the week, and that includes correspondence. So if you send a letter to Megan, or one of us, it will get spread quite quickly.
Go to our website.
Yes, yeah, to the
Yep.
website.
Go to the website, just click on it.
Thank you.
Great, so I'm gonna transition us to close out. So I'll drone on for a few minutes and I'll turn it to each commissioner to share some closing thoughts. So I took a scribble of notes as y'all were talking today. Fabulous conversation. Thank you for your time. Especially, it's hard sitting here for quite a while, but these are important, critical topics that we need to all get together and coalesce around, and I'm seeing some of that. So that's fantastic. Obviously, a big theme today was safety. It came up in early presentations. It's been a tenet throughout our conversation today. From anything for what I would term keeping traffic on the right roads. When we have congestion issues, when we have other issues, keeping it on the facilities that are designed to have those is a safety issue. It's not just a congestion issue. To quite a few topics around enforcement, behavior, all the different aspects of safety that we need to consider. The second big theme I think we hit on was economic development. Anything from kind of keeping our system in a state of good repair. Talked a lot about freight movement, potential for short line investments, potential really for anything like ports and other things, which really leads to kind of the other theme I heard today, which is making use of our existing capacity. Years ago, I managed again the bike ped program and some of the other things. And so we often talk in our policy documents and plans around vehicle capacity. What we really need to talk about as a state is people movement capacity. And we have a lot of existing capacity on public transportation, on bike and ped system, on our rail system, on our other systems. That's a very efficient way to make use of the resources that we already have. The other main theme I heard is around support and things like boots on the ground. Also recognition that in some areas there aren't a lot of projects that are happening right now, and how do we best utilize and focus some of that staff to prepare for the future, to be ready for funding investments, to best support the system across the state. I am going to read a couple quotes that I wrote today, my favorite quotes that I heard around the table in conversation. First and foremost, which I think is a fair point, and I'm just parodying what somebody else said. So as a state official, I just am repeating what somebody else said. Get politics out of transportation. Transportation is for everyone, and we need to really view it as a core service. Two, transportation is experienced locally. I think we heard that from a number of different people across the state. And basically, we're all in this together. We have similar issues, whether we're a city, a county, a state, a tribal entity, a transit agency. No matter that, we're all facing the same kind of issues. We're all trying to get people to places. Our communities are affected not only by the citizens within those communities, but by the travel through in two different areas of the state. Those things are good things. They support jobs, they support tourism, and things that, again, tie to that economic development thing. And so we have that kind of shared piece, which brings me to collaboration. Collaboration was a theme I heard quite a bit, and I think the power of a table like this is to get together. And what a couple quotes I heard for collaboration are, how can we mobilize? And Mike said, it's not an accident, it's communication. Right, so talking together, figuring out what some of those main themes are that we covered together. So talk together more, work together more. I think this is a great table to have some of these conversations, and I hope they continue. With that, I'll turn it back to the commissioners to close this out.
No, I'll let you talk. It's your chance.
Start at the end.
Start at the end.
Ready?
I was like, Phil goes, what?
I was jotting down my notes. I also want to respond to the get politics out of transportation comment as well. I really appreciate the sentiment, but I actually think it's the opposite. We will never get politics out of transportation. We can do politics right to make the system respond to our needs and concerns. We have a great story to tell with transportation as a policy issue. I mean, we are talking about people getting to their families, getting to their jobs, getting to medical care. We are talking about keeping our economy moving. These are fundamentally important things. Our problem is that transportation is taken for granted, until it doesn't work, Nobody notices the road until it's broken. Nobody notices that the bus is available until it isn't. And I think our fundamental politics problem, our challenge is to make what we take for granted something that we value and understand that we need to work really hard and invest in order to have. And I'm really excited about the conversations that we had today because we have a whole bunch of people around the table who do that, who value a working transportation system, functioning infrastructure, well-maintained infrastructure. And I hope that we all can work together to understand the needs, prioritize our best projects and investments, and then work together to advocate for that. Thank you.
I've sat in a lot of meetings in my years, and I've learned to evaluate meetings based on really one criteria. Doesn't matter how well they seem to go. The question is, do we make progress? So we take this meeting and we say, okay, there's been a lot of good dialogue, there's been a lot of great ideas. This will be a successful meeting if we actually do something and we get some things accomplished. So, let's take this as a session where we get motivated to say, you know what, we've got a lot in common. We've got a lot of challenges that now let's go do something. I think also, there's some things that we do particularly well. But when we do something particularly well, if we just add the words, but we can do better to that, then it will raise the bar everywhere. We're doing great, but you know what? I think we can do better, and just make that, part of the way we think. The other I would say is, I'm not particularly optimistic that we're going to get the funding we need in 2027. I think that there's a lot of headwinds in our way, and so we're going to have to manage an agenda of trade-offs because we're not going to get everything we need. We're not going to be able to even take our biggest challenges, I don't think, and be able to deal with them. So collectively, I think that we have to manage that disappointment with understanding, and it gets back to the word Amanda that you used, collaboration. And there's going to be disappointments that are going to hit us all over the place. The question is, have we done the right job in prioritizing the resources that we have to deploy? So I think it's one where, just from a mindset, I think, I'm planning to, be a little disappointed that we don't have all the resources that we need. I think that may be, part of what we're heading into with a very tough legislative agenda, in spite of all of the good work that I think is going to be done with those that are trying to get it across the goal line. So I think, a theme for me is be understanding, be patient with each other. So those are my thoughts.
Let me start by thanking you all again for spending time with us today and sharing some really good ideas. You've given me a lot to think about, and I need to cogitate on it a while. Clearly for me, one of the top things, and it's frankly something I've been thinking about, is what can we do about safety? And I think that's our biggest concern when you look at that. And I frankly, I don't like it, but I kind of share Commissioner Baker's concern that the legislature is not going to come out with the transportation package. We'll see. I'm not overly optimistic. I liked the chair's suggestion that we work together on a package. In fact, it kind of doubles up with some conversations I've been having with some of the industry groups about maybe you guys ought to go out and develop a package and bring it into the legislature. We'd have a better chance of passing something if it came in that way. So I think there's a kernel of an idea there that we need to see if there's a way to go, to do that. I have to chuckle a little bit, Commissioner Chang's comments about politics, and the commissioner's gone who brought it up. You know, I've been around this too long. Transportation has always been political. At its best, it's been bipartisan political. But the division we have today is really weird. The discussions that I hear a lot is from members is ODOT needs to get back to its core mission. Not a bad idea, but people don't agree on what the core mission is. For some, it means we don't do anything except preserve what we got and don't do bicycles, transit, and in fact, take the transit money and use it on the roads. And for others, it's, no, you gotta quit spending all that money on roads and do the multimodal stuff more. So, I mean, that's part of a problem. It's just all over the place of what people want. And others want to build new things, which we talked about today. Everybody has a project they want to build. I think there's some lessons there. One of the things that I've learned watching the last 5 transportation funding projects that went through the legislatures, every one of them tried to do something in every part of the state. And they missed that in the discussions the last time. And it's tougher. And I think the commissioner's comments about that make sense to me. I think if you're going to do a package, you have to spread that money around. And it may be different, maybe more in urbanized areas than others, but you have to make sure everybody gets a piece of that. And that's something we have to think about and get people involved. Anyway, that's my thoughts today. Again, you've given me a lot to think about. I have to think about it a bit.
Well, you didn't know what you signed up for, did you? There's a reason I wear cowboy boots. It's because I'm a determined little girl that will make sure it happens. So I'm gonna give you I'm gonna be optimistic here. We may not get everything we want, but we will get something. And we may have to phase this in. So for the ODOT employees, challenge goes to you. If you're sitting in the audience, think about this, think about the opportunities and how we can consolidate and coordinate working with our cities and counties to get real projects done. Maybe it's sharing staff or doing things that we need to do to be able to get this to move forward. Save money. Think about that, number one. Number two, I've challenged you, and now that I have your name, you're in. So you're in the game and you're going to be called on. And so my expectation to you is you will answer the call. So as we move forward, when you get that little phone call and says, hey, I need you to show up and I need you to do this, there's going to be an expectation that you're in. Because I think that collectively we can get this done. And again, I'm not going to put a timeline and worry about this. We're going to do it right and we'll get it accomplished. But it's going to take some compromise. We may have to wait our turn to get our project or get something done. You know, there's a conversation about, I mean, it really grieved me to see what happened to Connect Oregon. Because I've been part of Connect Oregon since the beginning. I've been part of the transit conversation and the multimodal. All of this has been really, really hard. Somebody said to me the other day, how do you feel? Because you've built this empire, now it's gone. And they were talking about the transit piece in my own community. I said, I'm not done. You just pushed my retirement out a little bit further. So again, I want to thank you because this is a challenge. We've only met like every 6 months. We may have to meet a little bit more. It may be virtually because travel is costly. Having these meetings costs. It's going to mean staff's going to have to double down and do a lot more work. In your community, when you talk about ODOT staff and there's not enough, well, look at that. I mean, the other thing is the commission, we're waiting to see what the governor does, but we need a director. We need to know where we're going too. And so in the meantime, we're holding the ship upright. We're going to keep moving in a forward motion. But again, I'm going to ask you to answer the call. That's how I'm going to leave this. with, thank you again, and I think we got you out of here, Mike. We're 6 minutes late. Right? Thank you. So nice. Well, no, I promised him I'd get out of here by 4:30, so you get back to bed.